Chapter 121. The woman was quite beautiful, even though she couldn't be compared to Lu Ling's dazzling beauty, and she didn't have Bai Yunxin's tranquil aura. Of course, this was just looks. She could still be considered a top-notch beauty. She wore a big red dress with palace gauze, and the ornaments on her hair were mainly shellfish and hawksbill turtles. She looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, and her eyes were clear. She seemed to be a pure and innocent girl. But this girl, who looked out of place in the surrounding environment and people, was the main character of the night. A quarter of an hour ago, Li Yunxin saw something coming ashore from the lake. The two at the front were the green-gray-faced, muscular man with a broad face and wearing armor. They walked out of the misty water vapor, and their eyes looked left and right, as if they were very vigilant. Then, two rows of strange people with arched backs and sharp noses climbed out of the water. They followed closely behind the strong men in armor, like soldiers in a line. After they came out of the water, they were silent, and only walked with stiff steps, as if they were performing a funny pantomime. Mortals could not see them. When these people came ashore and stood still in the weeds, they heard the sound. Two chubby, soft-fleshed women came out of the water, each holding a mud-conch instrument, which made a strange and ear-piercing sound, which mortals could not hear. Then, a young maid in a white dress supported the one in front of Li Yunxin, and they walked along the street toward Du Sheng's courtyard. Behind this woman in red was an old man, who indeed looked like a human, but also had a hunched back, and wore a lake green silk robe. When they arrived outside Du Sheng's courtyard, the woman in red and the maid stopped, and the old man went straight through the bamboo fence, and walked in front of Du Sheng. At that time, Du Sheng was still sitting with his eyes closed. The old man first inhaled the incense on the table, then opened his mouth, and took a few bites of the pig's head, the sheep's head, and the white chicken. Mortals couldn't see what was wrong with the three animals, but Li Yunxin knew that it was enjoying them. Then he reached out and tapped Du Sheng's head thrice. Du Ziwei's soul stood up. The hunchbacked old man smiled and bowed to him, saying, "Young Master Du is a great benefactor to our family's Hongyang, so the Lord Dongting ordered me to come and thank you. However, my Hongyang has been together with young Master for a long time, and they have had intimate contact. Moreover, she admires young Master's noble character, and wishes to marry young Master. Young Master, you can look outside the courtyard. If you are also interested in my Hongyang, why don't you help her achieve her goal?" Meanwhile, Du Sheng was completely unaware that his soul had left his body, and was looking out of the courtyard. He saw that the woman in red was looking at him. Her bright eyes and white teeth made her look even more charming in the night. This scholar had tasted the pleasures of men and women when he was young. But when had he ever seen such a beauty? He hastily said, "Xiao Sheng has cultivated 3 lifetimes of good fortune to meet Hongyang. How can I dare to decline? Good. After saying this, he proudly looked at Kuan Yangzi and the people on the street. But how could those people see a soul? Du Sheng was about to stir up trouble again when the old man said, "If that's the case, quickly follow me to the Whitewood Forest's Red Flower City. The Lord Dongting is waiting for young Master to feast." After saying this, he used his hand to pull Du Ziwei. As soon as he pulled, Du Ziwei became silly again, as if he had lost his mind, and finally left his body. It was also at this time that Li Yunxin said a few words to those people. But he was ridiculed. The old man led Du Ziwei's soul out of the courtyard, and saw the people on the street. His pair of old eyes immediately turned into crescent moons, and he repeatedly said, Good. Since it's Hongyang's big day, let's invite these fellow villagers to congratulate her. Capturing Hongyang from the lake and enduring the wind, sun, and salt to get married was not in vain." After saying this, those mutants who were originally standing in the weeds came over, and began to pull those idle men and women. Li Yunxin saw it clearly. As soon as those people moved, they pulled the souls out of their bodies, as if they were holding a child or a chicken or a duck, effortlessly. There was also a strange person who walked to Li Yunxin's side, and reached out to pull him. But the woman in red had already seen him, and waved her hand to order the strange person to step back. She walked back and forth in front of Li Yunxin a few steps, then asked, I see that you are not a mortal. Why did you remind them to run away? Do you love these mortals and want to be a human? Therefore, Li Yunxin answered, Not really. If there are no people, where will we get offerings? Hearing this, the woman in red seemed to have developed an interest in him that far surpassed that of Du Sheng. She asked again, But they don't seem to understand your good intentions. What are you going to do? Thus, Li Yunxin turned around and killed Kuan Yangzi with a palm strike. At this time, although the mortals on the street were still standing, their souls had already left their bodies. Li Yunxin knew that if those strange people took their souls away, those people would die a violent death. The cause of death was unknown. The woman in red stood quietly, watching him do all that and listening to him speak. She asked, Which Yin spirit are you? Only then did Li Yunxin smile and say, Me? As for me, I was originally a human. Later on, I was beaten to death and became what I am today, a ghost cultivator. The woman tilted her head and looked at him, her interest growing. Why were you beaten to death? Why weren't you taken away by the king of hell? Oh, because when I was alive, I liked to eat human flesh. Li Yunxin shrugged. After killing too many people, I became a demon. When the relatives and friends of those I ate found me, they killed me. Because my killing intent was too strong, I could not enter the cycle of reincarnation. That was why I cultivated the ghost path and became a Yin spirit. The girl blinked in surprise, as if she found this very strange. The maidservant beside her had been waiting quietly, but now she looked at the moon and said softly, Hong Nyang, it's getting late. The girl ignored her and stared at Li Yunxin. She thought for a while and asked again, You were a human when you were alive. Why did you eat humans? At this time, the maidservant pulled her sleeve again. This Hong Nyang did not even look at her. With a flick of her sleeve, the maidservant was sent flying more than 10 steps away. With a loud bang, the maidservant hit the bamboo fence of Du Sheng's house. Then, as if ordering a servant to serve a cup of tea, she said, Dissect her for me. Li Yunxin did not see the maidservant's expression clearly. He only saw the hunchbacked old man in a green robe slowly walking over. He took out a small knife from somewhere and waved it at the maidservant on the ground. The pretty young lady disappeared. Only a big white carp with its stomach cut open was left on the ground. It swung its tail a few times, causing dust to fly up, and then it stopped moving. But he only smiled at the Hong Nyang and said, The cloud has no heart, the water is leisurely. Who asked me to not have a heart in my previous life? At that time, I did not know anything about etiquette and morality. I only felt that eating humans was no different from eating chickens and ducks. When the girl heard this, her eyes brightened. What about now? Li Yunxin was silent for a while. He smiled and shook his head. In this life now, do you think I still have a heart? The girl tilted her head and thought for a while. Then she looked up at the moon. Suddenly, her expression changed and she covered her mouth. Ah, it's getting late. That white carp was right. My father is getting impatient. After saying this, she did not leave. Instead, she looked at Li Yunxin reluctantly. She only felt that what this person did and said just now, for some reason, was in line with her heart. It was as if this person knew everything she thought and liked. Hong Yang looked at the soul of Kuan Yangzi, who was standing next to him, and pointed at it. What do you want him to do for you? Li Yunxin was still smiling kindly. His smile was gentle and sincere. Under the moonlight, it was strangely attractive. Seeing that Hong Yang is so happy, I don't have any gifts to give. So, I used a method to take the soul of this Taoist priest. I used a strand of my hair to transfer some spiritual power to him. His soul is more clever than those ordinary people. I gave it to Hong Yang as a servant. It can be considered as fulfilling his wish to live a long life. Hong Yang seemed to be very happy after hearing this. She jumped up, clapped her hands, and said, Good, 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 I accept your gift. You are good-looking and interesting. Let me tell you, I am the new Dragon King of the Sanhika Dragon King Temple. If you want to see me, go there and call me. Maybe I will see you? Hey, I'm leaving. You are not allowed to leave. I still want to play with you in the future. If you dare to leave, I will ask someone to cut you open. After saying this, Hong Yang turned around and left. It seemed that she was really afraid that the Lord Dongting would be anxious. It only took a few seconds for the two of them to talk. At this time, the people on the street saw that Li Yunxin killed the Taoist priest. They all widened their eyes in fear and wanted to run away. But soon, they found that they could not move, as if they were controlled by something. When they finished talking, Red Madam turned around and left. The mutants who were with the mortals also escorted their ghosts away. Therefore, there was a series of crashing sounds. These 40 people fell to the ground one by one. They were all dead. The night was eerily silent. Li Yunxin was still standing under the tree, watching the mutants all over the mountain return to the water. The night became cold again. Then he slowly patted the bamboo fan in his hand, walked through the corpses on the street, and slowly walked along the road. What on earth was the Lord Dongting? Although he had been near the city of Wei for less than 2 months, it was normal that he did not know about the big demons nearby. However, the Lord Dongting, was he in the waters under the jurisdiction of the 9th young master? This Hong Nyang was undoubtedly the daughter of the Lord Dongting, who was pickled like a salted fish. Her manner was even grander than that of the 9th young master. What kind of person was the Lord Dongting? Such a person in the Wei River in the Dongting Lake, the arrogant big demon, the 9th young master, never mentioned him. He seemed to be a big guy. Li Yunxin knocked on his palm with the folding fan and stopped walking. Suddenly he laughed happily. His daughter dared to occupy the temple of the Dragon King. But no other Yin spirit caused trouble. A few days ago, he tried to find the translucent jade slip left by the 9th young master. But he could not find it. Maybe it was related to the Lord Dongting. He seemed to be very strong. But he was not sure if he was strong enough to take the blame of Bai Yunxin. Chapter 122. There were more than 100 families in Egret town, and about 500 people. More than 40 people died in one night. Since they were all related to each other, the whole town was in mourning during the day. In normal times, this would definitely be a big case that would shock the prefecture government. But at this critical juncture, who would have the time to care? Magistrate Zhao was planning to go north, and the 3 magistrates were also busy dealing with the disaster in Weicheng. After all, such a big thing happened in one's jurisdiction, and the future was bleak. So on the 3rd day, only one constable came from Weicheng with 3 officials. They first talked to the clan elder and the bodyguard. After that, they just treated it as a natural disaster. Don't make trouble again. Otherwise, the officials in the city would be worried, and they might arrest all of you and interrogate you for money and murder. This act of scaring, then there would be no way to cry and complain. At this time, people remembered the miraculous event that Du Ziwei mentioned. So the 3 words Lord Dongting became the most frequently used words in Egret town. This was the result that Li Yunxin wanted. If there was really a person called Lord Dongting, and he was a powerful low-key demon, then people in Egret town would definitely know about him. Maybe they didn't know what Lord Dongting was, but someone must have heard of him, or directly or indirectly contacted him. Now that something like this had happened, people would start talking about him, and a lot of old things might be dug up. Li Yunxin was very sure of this, because he was also looking for the temporary imperial residence of the 9th young master. He already had some understanding of the temporary imperial residence. So he knew that the 9th young master took Lu Ling's ancient book of Luo and the feather robe into his temporary imperial residence. But he might not have brought the temporary imperial residence with him, and it should be somewhere else. Li Yunxin had the reverse scale of the 9th young master, so he followed the aura and went to the place where the temporary imperial residence was supposed to be. It was gone. Someone had taken the palace before him. He didn't have a clue before. But now he realized that the most likely person was the Lord Dongting. The book of Luo and Yue were fine, but there was still the translucent jade scroll. Someone actually wanted to take advantage of him. This was simply outrageous. Therefore, after successfully bringing up the topic, Li Yunxin spent the next few days walking around the town, listening to the people talking about the Lord Dongting. Right now he was sitting in a tea house, savoring a cup of tea. It was afternoon, and the sun was shining brightly. The weather was neither hot nor cold, and the warm breeze carried the fragrance of flowers and plants. He sat at a table by the window and looked out at the bluestone street sprinkled with mottled shadows of trees and sunlight. Looking to the west, you can see the white light on the horizon. That is Dongting under the sun. Tier's bamboo fan was placed on the table. Steam was rising from the half cup of tea. He heard a few people at the neighboring table talking about the Lord Dongting. However, it was obvious that he was talking nonsense. Many things were illogical and common sense, and they were speculating about demons with human thinking. Many people swore that they had heard about the Lord Dongting, or someone close to them had heard about the Lord Dongting. However, once they asked carefully, they found that my friend and my relative were completely untrue. Li Yunxin was a little annoyed, so he planned to get up and eat something. In fact, he was eating now because he was greedy. His body was his spirit, and it could be strengthened by the power of wish. Although he could touch it, he could also pass through the wall like a ghost as long as he thought about it. However, it didn't feel good. However, there was no Munan restaurant in this town, and the food was not to his taste. Therefore, he stood up and hesitated for a while, thinking about whether he should use his supernatural power to find a restaurant in the city of Wei. In ancient times, Liang traveled to Europe to feed pigeons. Today, Dragon King Li traveled to the city of Wei to have a sumptuous meal. It was also a good story. However, at this moment of hesitation, his ears keenly captured a voice in another corner of the tea house. After this, it's not good to go to Taoist Li's banquet. After all, there are things to take care of at home. It's hard to say. It's said that he has a new beautiful concubine. It's hard to refuse, I'm afraid he. There was nothing unusual about these words, but the voice was lowered. It was this detail that made Li Yunxin turn his head subconsciously and look at the person who spoke. With just one glance, he realized that something was going on. The three men who spoke were in their 40s or 50s and seemed to be from wealthy families. Considering the population and economic situation of this town, they should be the heads of families or have their own business. Generally speaking, they were the middle class and the elite of this town. There was nothing unusual about these three old men gathering together to brag or discuss some matters. However, many details told Li Yunxin that they were a little nervous. It was not because of the surrounding environment that brought them pressure, but because of what they were discussing. The fine wrinkles at the corner of their eyes, the corners of their mouth, and the Adam's apple all told Li Yunxin this conclusion. What he was talking about was something that they were looking forward to and excited, but it also made them feel ashamed and uneasy. And he mentioned the words Taoist Li. Li Yunxin sat down again and quietly picked up the half cup of tea. She quietly pricked up her ears to listen. After an hour, the three people left the tea house. Li Yunxin stood up and also followed them out of the door with his folding fan. The people on the street all looked distressed, and the three people walked out in a hurry. They walked along the long street for a while and went straight west. Li Yunxin was more and more sure that he followed the right people. They were walking in the direction of Du Sheng's house. More than 40 people died there, and people said that the murderous aura was too strong, and it was too late to avoid it. But the three people didn't care. It seemed that they were going to the ferry over there. They boarded the boat from the ferry and traveled on the water for an hour. Then they arrived at Mount June. He followed the three people out of the long street, and when there was no one around, Li Yunxin shook his body, turning into a middle-aged scholar with a long beard. He had a handsome face and wore a white brocade robe. After a few steps, one of the three people turned around and saw him, so he stopped and didn't go. When Li Yunxin slowly walked over, he stopped him and politely asked, "Friend, you look unfamiliar. Where are you from, and where are you going?" The speaker seemed to be the backbone of the three. Li Yunxin had confirmed this in the tea house. He was a slightly chubby middle-aged man, and his family ran a hotel. He was called Shopkeeper Ding. Li Yunxin blinked and looked surprised. "Ah, I'm from the Tang of the East, and I'm going to Mount June in the West. You are. Can't you go there?" Shopkeeper Ding exchanged glances with the other two people and said, "The Tang of the East? I've never heard of this place." He thought for a moment and then said, "Friend, why are you going to Mount June?" "Sightseeing," Li Yunxin said. I travel all the way in the world just to collect anecdotes and anecdotes, so that I can write a novel. I heard that the 1,000-mile Dongting is a magnificent scenery in the southeast, and Mount June is also one of the 8 sceneries in Dongting. Speaking of this, shopkeeper Ding hurriedly interrupted him. Do you really have a lot of anecdotes and anecdotes? Li Yunqin opened his eyes wide in confusion. Of course. Shopkeeper Ding was overjoyed, and he clapped his hands and laughed. Good. Since you come to Mount June for sightseeing, we can also be regarded as half a host. Let me introduce you to a first-class romantic figure. How about it? Li Yunqin laughed in his heart. If it's a romantic figure, then I'd like to meet him. How dare I disobey? Seeing his forthright behavior, the 3 people were even happier. They immediately took his hand enthusiastically and led him all the way to the ferry. Chapter 123. When they arrive at the ferry, it turns out that a boat has been waiting for them. A man wearing a water suit and a bamboo hat stands at the bow of the boat. He has no oar or pole in his hand and doesn't speak. Seeing the 4 people coming, he looks up and points at Li Yunqin. It seems that he is asking why there is one more person. The man seems to be very pale. His face is blue as if he is seriously ill. He has a long and thin face with sharp edges. He always looks a little familiar. Shopkeeper Ding smiles and bows to him, saying, I met a wonderful man on the way. He has some strange stories. I'm going to introduce him to your Taoist. The man stops asking and gets out of the way from the bow. The 3 people get on the boat easily. The boat sinks slightly and makes a circle of ripples on the water. Li Yunqin looks at the boat and the vast Dongting Lake. He hesitates for a moment and then gets on the boat. Then there is a splash. The man jumps into the water. He is in the water. His body is bending and his legs are kicking fast. He is actually swimming in the water and pushing the boat. Shopkeeper Ding laughs. This young man has a weird temper and is not easy to talk to. Well, what's your name? Oh, I'm Li Xuanhuan. The boat is sailing on Dongting, and the sun is gradually tilting to the west. The blazing sun becomes soft and dim. The sparkling waves on the lake are really like fish scales. It is the first time for Li Yunqin to see such clear water. Not far from the shore, he can even see the water grass at the bottom of the lake. However, the boat gradually goes deep into the water and becomes a piece of deep jade. In the distance, he can see Mount June. Mount June is actually an island with a lonely peak on the island. Looking from here, the island was covered in emerald green vegetation. A beautiful and tall mountain peak rose steeply from the island, with clouds and mist lingering around it. It was truly a heaven-defying creation. It seems that it will take a long time to get to Mount June. Li Yunqin chats with the 3 people. He has learned most of the things from their conversation in the tea house. It is said that there is a hermit Taoist Li on Mount June. This Taoist Li is an extraordinary person. Perhaps it was a descendant of a wealthy merchant who was disillusioned with worldly affairs and brought his wealth to Mount June to build the School of the Emperor Star. The School of the Emperor Star was built against the mountain. It was divided into the front, middle, and back halls. The front hall was built at the foot of the mountain. The middle hall was built halfway up the mountain, and the back hall was built in the clouds at the top of the mountain. The 3 halls were connected by a wooden walkway, and the walkway was suspended in midair. According to shopkeeper Ding, he had once walked along the plank path to the middle hall. Standing in the middle of the clouds on the mountainside, the soles of your feet hanging in the air. The surrounding vegetation was verdant, and there was a vast expanse of mist in the distance. I felt like I was in a fairyland. As for Taoist priest Li, at the end of every month, he would invite the local scholars to the School of the Emperor Star. He had only one hobby, listening to stories. He invited them to the front hall, served them refreshments and tea, and invited them to tell stories. If he heard a novel or interesting story, he would ask that person to point out 3 more friends to go with him to the middle hall. According to shopkeeper Ding, there were delicacies that could make people swallow their tongues, as well as other wonderful things. Li Yunqin knew about these things. She was scheming and had an ulterior motive, so she started to lead the 3 of them to talk. He instinctively felt that this Taoist priest, Li, might be related to the Lord Dongting in some way. How could such a strange person, who had created such a scene on Mount June, how could he not be related to the Lord Dongting? Perhaps this was a breakthrough. The four people chatted and gradually became familiar with each other. The other two people who had been quiet also became interested. The dark-faced, thin, and tall one was called Officer Zhao, and the chubby one was called Officer Sunday. Li Yunxin sat firmly on the side of the boat and asked, "Is there a story behind the name Mount June?" Officer Sun casually said. "Ah, it's because of the Lord Dongting. I heard people talking about the Lord Dongting in the town these days. Is there such a story?" Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat, but he still asked with interest, "Does Brother Sun know the story?" Officer Sun hesitated for a while and shook his head. "I'm not afraid that you will laugh at me. This is a story passed down in my family. I don't usually talk about it. But today, I hit it off with you." Shopkeeper Ding and Officer Zhao were also surprised and said, "Old Sun, I didn't hear you talk about this usually. What story do you have here?" Officer Sun smiled bitterly. "Well, it's nothing special. I just heard about it. When I was a child, I heard from my elders that there was no Dragon King in Wei River and Dongting Lake. Now we are in the Daqing State Dynasty. Which dynasty was it 2,000 or 3,000 years ago? Well, it was none of them. At that time, we were called Nan's 100 Kingdoms. Then a deity appeared in Dongting Lake. He was called Lord Dongting. He helped the monarch of Wei Kingdom to pacify the Nan's Lake. Gradually, the territory of the Daqing State came into being. At that time, it was said that Lord Dongting lived on Mount June. This mountain got its name from him. But now, after so many years, we have Dragon King in Wei River, who still remembers Lord Dongting. You can go home and ask your elders. Maybe they also know about this." Hearing this, Shopkeeper Ding frowned and thought for a while. Then he clapped his hands. "That's right. I really remember him. I knew the name was familiar. Didn't it mean that the Dragon King showed his divinity in the city of Wei a few days ago?" Officer Zhao blinked. Did the Dragon King move to another place, and Lord Dongting showed up again? What did the boy named Du say again? That Lord Dongting wanted to repay his kindness? Officer Sun hurriedly said, "Bah! Don't talk about Dragon King and Dongting Lake." Officer Zhao patted his head. "Yes. Oh, Dragon King, don't blame me. I didn't mean it." But they didn't know that Dragon King Li of Wei River was sitting next to them. Hearing this, Li Yunxin knew that this trip must be fruitful. Mount June got its name because of Lord Dongting. Taoist Li also built the school of the Emperor Star on Mount June. There must be some connection, but he didn't think it was a coincidence. In his opinion, except for extremely accidental and isolated events, all coincidences and accidents must have a reason. For example, Officer Sun happened to know the story of Mount June. It was also because he stayed in Egret Island for a long time, and deliberately chose the three people who were most likely to know the secret. This was not a coincidence. He was now walking in the capital of Li Kingdom, but Officer Sun just happened to pester him and talk about the story of Mount June. This was a coincidence. After chatting for a while, the boat arrived at the dock of Mount June. From afar, they saw a servant waiting at the dock. When the boat docked, the white and soft servant didn't say anything. He just smiled and bowed, leading the four people forward. The three of them were not surprised, but Li Yunxin deliberately looked at him a few times, and then smiled slightly. In front of the dock, there was a stone path leading to the forest in the distance along the snow-white beach. In the forest, they saw a stone gate archway with two leaping stone fish carved on it. There were stone lions guarding on both sides. On the archway, there were three ancient characters, School of the Emperor Star. Li Yunxin looked at the gate from afar and made a sound of surprise. He knew that tonight would probably be interesting. The sun was about to set. The sunlight stretched the shadows of the people who had been waiting in front of the gate and cast them on the stone ground. One of them looked anxious. Li Yunxin recognized him. He was the emptiness state cultivator of the Pill Cauldron sect in the city of Wei, Song Yunzi. *****. Note 1. Diving suit. A one-piece diving suit made from shark skin by the ancients. The surface is smooth and warm. Chapter 124. When he got closer, he saw that Song Yunzi had his hands behind his back and was talking to a servant. Wait. Do you know the relationship between me and your master? If you dare stop me again, I will kill you on the spot. But the servant only smiled and didn't say anything, as if he didn't know fear. He just blocked the door and didn't let him go. Shopkeeper Ding didn't know Song Yunzi, but he was a sociable person. He walked over and cupped his hands towards Song Yunzi, smiling. Friend, don't be impatient. Taoist Li has some rules here. Since you were invited here, you must be an interesting person. Why argue with a child? I think we should. Song Yunzi glanced at him coldly. Scram. Who do you think you are? After saying this, he waved his sleeves, and the servant flew back 4 or 5 steps, falling to the ground and unable to get up. Then, Song Yunzi took a big step forward and walked towards the door. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Shopkeeper Ding was so angry that his face turned red. He stammered. This person, this. Li Yunxin patted his shoulder and added fuel to the fire. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Didn't you see that he was wearing a Taoist robe? He was also a cultivator of immortality. What if he killed us? Shopkeeper Ding panted and stared at Song Yunzi's back. Bah! This kind of person doesn't deserve to cultivate. How does Taoist Li have such a friend? Although angry, the 10 people outside followed Song Yunzi into the door. Only Li Yunxin was walking behind. When she passed by the manservant, she grabbed him and pulled him up. The servant was still smiling when he fell to the ground. He stood up with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, but the smile on his face didn't change. Li Yunxin also smiled at him, and followed the others. Behind them, the sun disappeared west of the mountains and night fell. Behind the door was a stone road. There were small stone street lamps on the side of the road. They were about half a person's height, and there was one every 10 steps. They didn't know how, but when people passed by, the lamps would light up. Although they had seen it a few times, they were still amazed. On both sides of the street light was a meadow, and behind the meadow were rockery, flowers and trees that reached the sky. The front yard was quite spacious, reminding Li Yunxin of the garden in front of a European-style castle. The end of the road was brightly lit. Li Yunxin looked through the gaps in the crowd and saw the front hall. The front hall was built in an antique style, and the materials used were mainly original colored wood. The 8 doors of the hall were wide open. Behind the door was a spacious hall, with a wooden floor and a short table. It was very similar to the second floor of the Cheonghua building. His eyesight was good, so he saw a person sitting in the main seat of the hall, facing south. He gently stroked his beard with 2 fingers and smiled at the crowd. This must be Taoist Li. Looking at his face, Li Yunxin could only tell that he was a handsome middle-aged man. But he couldn't tell his age. His smile was kind, but there was a hint of majesty to it. She wore an apricot yellow Taoist robe, and had her hair combed into a bun. There was a jade hairpin in her hair. There was nothing special about her attire. At this time, Song Yunzi strode to the front of the hall, and went straight into the hall, saying, Brother Li, there's trouble. Li Yunxin slightly raised his eyebrows. He thought that Song Yunzi was just joking when he said he was friends with Taoist Li. He didn't expect that the arrogant Taoist Li would really treat this secular Taoist as a true friend. He even thought that Taoist Li was superior to him. This Taoist Li seemed to have some skills. At least the street lights that lit up just now weren't something that a rogue Taoist could easily learn. Taoist Li was not surprised at all after hearing Song Yunzi's words. He still smiled and put down his hand, saying, Brother, why are you so alarmed? What trouble is it? His voice was very pleasant to hear, but he spoke very slowly. Every sentence was slow and unhurried. When it entered the ears of the listeners, it made them feel as if their whole body had lost all strength. They just wanted to sit quietly and listen. At this time, Song Yunzi displayed the bearing that a cultivator should have. He didn't put the mortals behind him in his eyes. He looked at the table in the hall, then at Taoist Li, who was sitting in a dangerous position. He seemed to be used to this, and knew that he couldn't do anything about it. Thus, after a moment of hesitation, he sighed and walked to a table, then knelt down and said, Brother Li, that fairy Ling Kong's Dharma body is gone. The people from the heavenly abode will probably come in a few days. How can I explain it to them? Fairy Dharma body. When these two words entered everyone's ears, they were all stunned. Although they didn't know the inside story of what happened a few days ago, they had heard rumors about the battle between the immortals, the Dragon King, and the demons. Now that they heard these words, 3 of them stopped in their tracks. After a moment of hesitation, they nervously smiled and cupped their hands toward Taoist Li, saying, "Taoist, since you have an urgent matter, we won't disturb you tonight." Taoist Li still had a smile on his face. He nodded slightly and said slowly, "Good, good, good. Go, go, go." The 3 people hurriedly turned around and wanted to leave. Song Yunzi glared at them and shouted, "Don't seek death." The 3 people trembled and said, "Yes, yes, yes." They hurriedly ran away. The remaining 6 people, including Li Yunxin, didn't know whether to advance or retreat. These people probably didn't know the seriousness of the matter. They weren't very quick-witted. They also coveted Taoist Li's feast. They really loved the pleasure of their stomachs and bodies. At this moment of hesitation, Taoist Li smiled again. "Friends, why don't you sit down? It's not a big deal. It's just a small problem." Song Yunzi became anxious. "Brotherly, it's not a small matter. That's..." Taoist Li raised his hand to interrupt him, smiled and said slowly, "I have my ways. Don't worry. First, let's get down to business. Come, my friends, take your seats. Oh dear. I have a new friend." Hearing their master say this, the 5 people slightly calmed down. Without looking at Song Yunzi, they each picked a seat and sat down. Once Li Yunxin was seated, shopkeeper Ding said, "I'll let Taoist Zhang know that we met this Brotherly by chance on the road. Brotherly came from the Tang dynasty of the East, traveling all over the world to see the beautiful scenery and collect anecdotes. I heard that Taoist Li happened to be in the same place, so I came along." Song Yunzi, who was full of anxiety, lost the coldness and reservation of a cultivator today. Or to some extent, he slightly approved of these people who were in the same room as him in front of Taoist Li. He sneered, "What kind of place is the Tang dynasty of the East? I've never heard of it." But Li Yunxin didn't care about him at all. He was thinking about what this unlucky Song Yunzi had said just now, while observing Taoist Li. This Taoist Li was very strange. He was too calm and collected. This made Li Yunxin think of some people who had overhauled their faces. He was smiling, but there was almost no subtle change in his expression. It was as if his face was stiff like a mask. Taoist Li turned to Li Yunxin with a smile and went straight to the point. "My friend, what story did you tell me? If your story is pleasant to listen to, then I will be blessed tonight." He slowly raised his hand and pointed to the mountain behind him. "I've prepared delicious food and beautiful women in the middle hall. If I like your story, the 4 of you can go up the mountain." Song Yunzi seemed to really believe that this Taoist Li had a supernatural power that could solve his problem. He temporarily suppressed his temper, took a breath, and returned to the way he was when Li Yunxin first met him. Sitting next to the prefectural magistrate Li Yaoxi, with his eyes slightly closed, without sadness or joy. As for whether or not he was truly emotionless, only he himself would know. So Li Yunxin smiled and said, "Taoist Li, please. I happen to have a story that will amuse you, Taoist. This story is called Little Dragon Son Looking for Mother." Chapter 125. Hearing this name, everyone was a little surprised. Li Daozhang was still smiling and didn't blink. "Oh, then tell us." Song Yunzi looked up at Li Yunxin and sneered. "What a shitty name." Li Yunxin could understand Song Yunzi's mood at the moment. He came to find his savior in a hurry, but he was forced to listen to a story. He couldn't vent his anger on Li Daozhang, so he could only vent his anger on them. As for whether it would embarrass the host or make the host unhappy, he probably thought about it before he started cultivating. After cultivating for a long time and being flattered by others, he probably forgot about it. He said slowly, "There was a little dragon son in the pond. It had a big head and a dark gray body. It swung its long tail and swam around." He didn't pay attention to the story at all. He only replaced the little tadpole with the little dragon son, and the mother frog with the mother dragon. But he told it so vividly and intoxicatedly, shaking his head. Ding Zhao and Sun felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. Sweat beads appeared on their foreheads. They thought Li Xuanhuan was handsome and seemed to be a knowledgeable person on the boat. Why did he become like this? They wondered if there was a prize at the end of the story. If the prize was to Li Daozhang's liking, maybe he wouldn't blame them. The others thought the same as the three of them. Therefore, although Song Yunzi was frowning as he listened, he endured it and did not say anything. He only occasionally said a few mocking words like, "Ha ha," or, "What a joke in the world," and waited for the rest of the story. After Li Yunxin finished the last sentence, they followed their mother and spat every day. He sat there without saying anything else. The group of people stayed silent with him for a while. The few elites of society, the cultivators of a school, and the master of a palace sat in a row obediently and listened to his fairy tale carefully and quietly. Then, Song Yunzi suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "You bastard, how dare you make fun of us?" Li Daozhang was still smiling and looking at him. Li Yunxin raised his head and looked at Song Yunzi for a while. Suddenly he smiled. "My friend, are you an idiot?" Song Yunzi's eyes widened. She looked at Li Yunxin in disbelief for a while, then looked at Li Daozhang. She then turned her gaze back and pointed at herself. "Are you talking to me?" Everyone else was stunned. It was hard to imagine that Li Yunxin would say such vulgar words in such an occasion. Li Yunxin also slammed the table and cursed. King didn't stop talking when I was talking just now. Li Daozhang. Li Daozhang hadn't even said anything, and you jumped out to make your presence known. I hate people like you the most. You take every opportunity to act cool, but in the end, you always act like a fool. He cursed repeatedly, causing everyone present to frown. Song Yunzi's expression was as if he had seen the most amazing thing in the world. He was shocked and angry, and only thought about how to punish this arrogant mortal. But when Li Yunxin scolded him, he didn't even take a breath. Song Yunzi felt like he was going to die from anger. He had to think of a way to torture him. Soon he heard the next sentence. His rage reached a new high. He thought to himself, "I can't let you off so easily, I must." Then, he heard something even more outrageous. For a moment he was stunned. Ever since he started cultivating, no one had ever dared to scold him like this. When Li Yunxin stopped, Song Yunzi was speechless. His eyes looked like they were going to pop out. He pointed at Li Yunxin with a trembling finger. He looked at him, then at Li Daozhang. His eyes moved back and forth between the two. But in the end, he couldn't say anything. His chest was about to explode. Li Yunxin didn't look at him. He let out a long breath, picked up the cup of tea in front of him, and took a sip to moisten his throat. Ding Zhao and Sun looked at him dumbfounded. Just as they were about to open their mouths to help him, they heard Li Daozhang laugh. Okay, this story is interesting. This time, Song Yunzi even forgot to tremble. He stared at Li Daozhang without saying anything. Li Daozhang smiled and waved his hand. Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. In my opinion, he's very interesting. He's my friend. There's no need to fuss over this kind of thing. Brother Li? Tell me, which three people are you going to bring to my hall? Li Yunxin's expression was as usual as she pointed at Ding, Zhao and Sun and said, "It's these three." At this time several people shouted, "Li Daozhang, why don't you let us tell you a story? We've been thinking hard for more than a month." At this time, Li Daozhang had already stood up and walked toward the rear courtyard. His movements were as leisurely as his words, leaving Song Yunzi in place. Ding, Zhao, and Sun didn't know how the situation had turned around. They sat there in a daze. Of course, they didn't know that Li Yunxin deliberately told them a story that seemed a bit stupid. They guessed that Li Daozhang probably wouldn't like it. But that didn't matter. He knew that. How could he be interesting in front of a certain kind of people? In fact, he also wanted Song Yunzi to run his mouth and give himself a reason to curse. If Song Yunzi dared to take Li Daozhang's life in front of him, then it meant that Song Yunzi didn't really care about this Li Daozhang. Then he also wouldn't be the person he was looking for. And if the situation became like this, then Li Daozhang would definitely think that he was very interesting. Because when he was telling the story, he had been observing the other party's reaction. The other party was very interested in him, far more than the others. Thus Li Yunxin stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and slowly walked through the middle of them. When he reached Song Yunzi's side, who was still in a daze, he happily winked at him. I know you're very angry, friend. But you're also a coward, who doesn't dare to do anything in front of him. Looking at you, you seem to have learned some magic. See, I don't like to play tricks the most. If you're not happy with me, let's meet in the small forest at the back of the mountain and fight, okay? Let me tell you, I obtained a mental cultivation method from a disciple of the Black Cave sect. I advise you not to ask for trouble. When he said the first half of this sentence, Song Yunzi almost couldn't control himself and wanted to punch him in the face. But after hearing the second half of the sentence, the anger on his face quickly disappeared. This emptiness realm cultivator of the Pill Cauldron sect of Shangqing finally let out a long breath and laughed. But it was already a complacent and cruel laugh. Okay. Song Yunzi stared at Li Yunxin and slowly retracted his hand. Okay. Then in a while we'll compete. Haha. Ha ha ha. He flicked his big sleeve and followed Li Daozhang to the back of the courtyard, laughing as he walked. Ha 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 ha. Li Yunxin sighed slightly. Idiot. Chapter 126. The entire Mount June was shrouded in the night. But at this time, the magnificence of the School of the Emperor Star could be seen. It wasn't the magnificence of the building, but the ingenuity of the design. Along the steep mountain wall of Mount June, a wooden plank path was slanted upwards. There were handrails on the plank path, and flower bud-like lamps hung under the handrails. When someone walked over, the lamps would light up one by one. It was like a golden dragon coiled on the mountainside. But Ding, Zhao, and Sun were no longer enthusiastically explaining the intricacies to Li Yunxin. The three of them were mortals, but they were businessmen, so they weren't stupid. They could tell that this Li Xuanhuan wasn't an ordinary person. At this moment, although he was walking towards the middle hall, his heart was still anxious. They were afraid that this brother Li would do something strange when he arrived at the middle hall. At the end of the plank path, there was a flat ground cut out from the middle of the mountain. It was paved with white marble and had carved patterns. It was much more exquisite than the front hall. Even though the middle hall was also made of wood, it was ingenious. All kinds of wood were mixed together, creating a colorful and gorgeous feeling. Half of the middle hall was embedded in the mountain. Taoist Li didn't greet the guests behind him and went straight into the hall. There was a hall with 8 doors in the middle hall, but there were no tables. There were only rattan mats for people to sit on. He walked to the chair's seat and smiled. My friends, please take a seat. But today I have a good news to announce. Song Yunzi sat down with his head held high and looked up at Li Yunxin. He even smiled at him and seemed to be in a good mood. Li Yunxin didn't want to pay attention to him and sat across from him. When the other three were also seated, he asked, What good news? Taoist Li stroked his beard and smiled. I have a new concubine. He looked at Song Yunzi as he spoke. But she is a new bride, so it's not convenient for her to meet you. Let me send her greetings to all of you. He clapped his hands. So today's banquet needs to be more sumptuous. Everyone, you're in for a treat. He clapped again after saying this. 6 maids who looked fair and soft walked over with a smile. They walked up to the 6 of them, but their hands were empty. First he knelt in front of him, then unbuttoned his shirt, and propped his arms on the floor. It became a white, soft, and fragrant meat table. Now Li Yunxin knew where the strange sense of shame in the words of Ding, Zhao, and Sun in the tea house came from. In this era, it was not a shameful thing for a man to be lustful and play with women. But like this, no matter where it was, it could be called promiscuous. This Taoist priest Li really knows how to have fun. But he was an old hand that had seen many big scenes, so his expression did not change. He clapped his hands and praised. Taoist priest is indeed a wonderful person. Taoist priest Li didn't say anything. He clapped again. 6 more servants came to the meat table with plates in their hands, put the plates down and left. Ding Zhao and Sun all stared at the plates. It seemed that they had completely forgotten their worries and troubles, and only thought about the food on the plates. But the problem was, although they were not the kind of people who lived a luxurious life, they were not poor people either. Wei was the biggest city in the kingdom of Qing. There were all kinds of things to eat and play in the city, How could they show such an expression towards a plate of food? Li Yunxin looked at Song Yunzi again. He found that although he looked calm, there were more subtle signs that he was also looking forward to it. Something was wrong. The taste of food couldn't completely conquer a normal person, not to mention a cultivator. Maybe there were other ways, the magic of immortals. A magic of immortals that could make an emptiness realm cultivator fall for it. Haha. He sighed softly and looked at the wooden plate. In fact, there were only 10 pieces of meat inside. The appearance was not bad. The surface was slightly crispy, and it was thinly sliced. There were some tendons in the slightly red meat. Once it entered the mouth, it would be crispy, tender, and fragrant. It would be a good taste. Daoist Li smiled and said, "Today's meat is vegetarian. The ingredients are fat and oily. First, we will use maize dark shadow bamboo as a drawer and slowly steam it. Then, we will slice it with a white jade knife and dry it in the shade of Mount June. Tonight, I will roast it again and serve it for everyone to enjoy. Please enjoy, esteemed guests." After saying this, Daoist Li used 2 fingers to pick up a piece and put it into his mouth. He chewed it carefully and then looked at Li Yunxin. The other 4 had already picked up the meat with a serious expression. They carefully and greedily tasted it. Only Li Yunxin stared at the meat for a while. He picked it up and put it in front of his nose to smell it. Then he put it down. Daoist Li stared at him and smiled. "My friend, don't you want to eat it? Which part doesn't suit your taste?" Song Yunzi raised his head and laughed mockingly. This person, haha. He is a crude and boring person. How could he recognize the beauty of this delicacy? This thing was originally. Li Yunxin smiled at him. "Shut up, idiot." Song Yunzi's eyes widened again. He was stunned for a while and was about to explode. Li Yunxin turned to Daoist Li and smiled. "Daoist Li, although this meat is delicious, it's a pity to eat it now." Song Yunzi was about to continue mocking him, but Daoist Li made a sound of surprise. "Then please tell me, what is the pity?" Li Yunxin shook his head lightly. He slowly reached out and tapped the side of the plate. Then he slightly lowered his head, as if thinking about what to say. But in reality, in these 3 breaths of time, his brain was operating at a speed he had never experienced in the past 15 years. Damn it! He originally wanted to catch a small grass snake to play with. But it seemed he had 1 foot in the snake's nest. After Daoist Li commented on the meat on the wooden plate, Li Yunxin's mind was struck by a bolt of lightning. It was the same bolt of lightning. 3 months ago, in that broken temple, Dragon Sun put the severed limb of the swordsman into his mouth and said, "Those who are bold, fat, ointment cannot eat like this. It needs to be slowly steamed, sliced, and air-dried. When it's cloudy, it can be eaten as a side dish." From the moment he saw the boatman at the ferry, he knew that this Daoist Li wasn't human. He was practically carved from the same mold as the servant beside Red Madam that night. That strange man with a sharp nose, round black eyes, and a dark green face, wasn't he a shrimp soldier? That broad armored man, wasn't he a crab general? And the boatman at the ferry today was a giant green shrimp. Then he saw the smiles on the faces of the servants beside this Daoist Li, and the smile on this Daoist Li's face. He was definitely not human. And he knew that the meat in front of him, perhaps Song Yunzi and the others weren't familiar with it, but he was very familiar with it, was human meat. Both of them ate human meat, and the way they ate it was almost the same. But Daoist Li was more particular. He followed Ding, Zhao, and Sun to see this Daoist Li because of the mysterious Lord Dongting. Li Yunxin had been thinking about why Dragon Sun never mentioned Lord Dongting. Maybe he was his subordinate. Such a proud Dragon Sun would be too lazy to talk about those things. But since the legend of Lord Dongting existed 3,000 years ago, and Mount June was named after him, then Lord Dongting must be a powerful demon, and not Dragon Sun's subordinate. Was he an enemy or a friend, or a foe or a friend? Li Yunxin knocked on the side of the wooden plate 3 times, then slowly raised his head and chuckled. Lu Ling could kill Dragon Sun, and Bai Yunxin could also kill Dragon Sun. If Lord Dongting was a 3,000-year-old demon, would he have the power to kill Dragon Sun? If they were enemies, would they be able to coexist peacefully? Would they have a common understanding of how to eat human meat? If they were enemies, why didn't Lord Dongting quickly occupy the temple that used to worship Dragon Sun after Dragon Sun died? But as far as he knew, he didn't. These days, other than this Sanhika Dragon King temple, all the other temples were empty. A great demon wouldn't be afraid of others fighting with him for incense. The reason why he didn't make a move must be because he had other intentions. For example, to lure the snake out of its hole. If a powerful demon killed Dragon Sun, he would definitely be curious about who occupied the empty Sanhika Dragon King temple, wondering if there were any survivors of Dragon Sun. Once he came, what would happen? He would be killed. Revenge. It seemed that Lord Dongting thought that one of the people who killed Dragon Sun was a demon. Then it was a friend. Lord Dongting was Dragon Sun's friend. At least he thought that he was Dragon Sun's friend. A friend that Dragon Sun didn't want to mention for some reason. Previously, Li Yunxin deliberately told the story of little Dragon Sun looking for his mother. Although he couldn't completely read Lord Dongting's mind because of his stiff expression, he knew that this story didn't make him feel disgusted. Instead, it made him think of another strange feeling, but it was a positive one. Lord Dongting wasn't Dragon Sun's enemy. Li Daoist didn't hate Dragon Sun. Li Daoist's way of eating human flesh was almost the same as Dragon Sun's. Maybe they even talked about this way. Li Daoist had such a palace in Dragon Sun's territory, and his extravagance was even bigger than Dragon Sun's. Dragon Sun actually allowed him to exist. Li Daoist's servants were surprisingly similar to Red Lady's servants. Red Lady was Lord Dongting's daughter. Li Daoist was Lord Dongting. Li Yunxin raised his head and smiled. Because a good friend of mine once said that meat cooked in this way should be eaten with wine on a cloudy day. And now it's a moonlit night, and there's no wine. And I thought of that friend, and seeing this delicacy now, I can't eat it anymore. After saying this, Li Daoist was silent for a while. He still had a smile on his face, but if he was a human, he would probably have a different expression at this moment. He stared at Li Yunxin, and even Song Yunzi and the three mortals noticed the abnormality. But before he could say anything, Li Yunxin had already stood up, strode to the center of the hall, and faced Li Daoist. The expression on his face became solemn, without a hint of playfulness. He bowed deeply to Li Daoist and said sorrowfully, "Lord Dongting, please avenge my friend." Chapter 127. Hearing this, the three mortals were still calm. They just stared with their eyes wide open, and their mouths wide open. They even forgot to eat the meat. Of course they knew Lord Dongting. When Li Yunxin was on the boat, he led them to discuss this issue. Now he had a clear impression of it. Therefore, he could only stare at Li Yunxin in a daze. He finally knew what was wrong with this person. He was a lunatic. When they first came, they thought he was a romantic scholar, because he talked so eloquently and acted so irrationally. But now, he was just a lunatic. However, Song Yunzi frowned after a moment of surprise. Although compared to many dragons among men, he seemed stupid and arrogant. As a cultivator, in terms of intelligence, there were indeed very few real fools. He had known this Taoistly for a long time. He knew he was a mysterious cultivator. He didn't know which cave or school he belonged to, but he was really good at Taoism. But now he heard Li Yunxin talk about Lord Dongting. He was not a mortal, so he had a different understanding of supernatural powers and people. Therefore, he seriously considered the name Lord Dongting. Unfortunately, he had only been in the city of Wei for more than 20 years. He didn't usually chat with mortals, so he didn't know what kind of god Lord Dongting was. After Li Yunxin exposed Taoist priest Li's identity, he finally stopped laughing. He rubbed his face, and his expression became solemn. He stared at Li Yunxin with his eyes wide open and thin lips puckered. He put his hands on the table and stared at Li Yunxin. After a while he said slowly, "When you came, I knew you were not an ordinary person, but I couldn't see through your real identity. But now you mentioned your friend. Tell me, who is your friend? What's your grudge against him?" Li Yunxin stood up slowly. He had gotten what he wanted from Lord Dongting's tone and actions, but he needed to confirm it. Or in other words, his top priority now was to stay away from this Taoist Li. After all, this was only his deduction. No matter how logical the deduction was, there was always the possibility of extreme abnormalities. His reaction and performance just now were not the best choice, but it was the best choice he could think of at the moment. He straightened his body, tightened his brows, pressed down the corners of his mouth, and squinted his eyes, looking sad and angry. "My name is not Li Xuanhuan," he said. "My real name is Li Yunxin. He's an artist." After saying these two sentences, he glanced at Song Yunzi and silently counted in his heart. 1, 2, 3. Indeed. Song Yunzi awoke from his momentary shock and shouted, "What nonsense are you talking about? Li Yunxin was dead. You clearly—" Li Yunxin immediately interrupted him with grief and indignation. He frowned and clenched his fists. His body trembled slightly. "I'm dead. I died in the scheme of you and that Lu Ling. Of course you know I'm dead." He stepped forward and asked Song Yunzi, "Didn't you and that Ling Kongzi plot to kill my friend and then fight with a big demon?" Song Yunzi was stunned again. He couldn't believe that Li Yunxin could talk nonsense in front of him without even blinking his eyes. But in Taoist Li's eyes, it seemed to mean something else. Without waiting for Song Yunzi to explain, Taoist Li turned to him and asked, "Is this true?" Li Yunxin shouted, "Lord Dongting is asking you if this is true." Lord Dongting's words. When he said Lord Dongting before, Song Yunzi was already confused about the identity of this Lord Dongting. After being friends for so long, he didn't know that Taoist Li had such a secret identity. So was it good or bad to be friends with him? Why are they talking about this now? His heart was filled with panic and anxiety, and his mind was in a mess. After Li Yunxin said Lord Dongting 2 more times, Song Yunzi finally lost his mind. He just wanted to figure it out first. "You are Lord Dongting." He didn't answer Taoist Li's question, but asked this question out of instinct. Li Yunxin shouted with grief and indignation, "You didn't expect this, did you? This is justice, he is Lord Dongting. What else do you have to say?" Song Yunzi was even more anxious. He said repeatedly, I am not. I will kill you, you bastard." He only knew that Li Yunxin was pressing him, not giving him time to breathe or think, so he couldn't tell the truth. Blood rushed to his head, and he waved his hand to attack Li Yunxin. "Only by killing this bastard can we talk." How could Li Yunxin be afraid of him? He was now in the body of a big demon, and he was extremely powerful. Although he was only in the transcendent state, and his power was not enough, he was not someone that an emptiness state cultivator could kill. He stood there with his head held high, and he didn't move an inch. He said passionately, "If Lord Dongting wants to protect your friend today, I will stand here and die in front of you." Song Yunzi was even more annoyed. His arm tore through the air, and a golden light appeared. It hit Li Yunxin's forehead. However, Taoist Li, who had been silent for a long time, shouted, "How dare you!" With a shout, an unstoppable and tyrannical demonic energy instantly swept across the entire lobby. In the blink of an eye, this demonic power broke the camouflage on Li Yunxin's body, and his original appearance was revealed. Song Yunzi's hand that hit Li Yunxin's forehead was forced back, and he even took a few steps back, and his whole body hit the wooden pillar behind him. Looking at this Taoist Li, what a majestic appearance! He was no longer the Taoist Li in the plain robe, but a red-armored god surrounded by green light. This Lord Dongting had a red face, and his face seemed to be smeared with grease. He had a pair of big black eyes, and the distance between his eyes was very wide. In the middle of his eyes was a wide nose, but his nostrils were small. His wide mouth was tightly closed, and 2 strands of red beard hung down from his lips. He wore a red robe, and the robe was decorated with scale armor. On his body, there was a silk cloak that looked like it was made of silk, and it fluttered in the air. This 9-foot-tall Lord Dongting looked like a god. Lord Dongting revealed his Dharmakaya, and his expression suddenly became much more lively. He frowned, waved his hand, and shouted with a loud voice, "Is this person telling the truth?" From the moment Yunzi was thrown into a daze, and then he saw the real bodies of this Taoist Li and Li Xuanhuan. He knew that these two were not humans. In shock and anger, he heard Li Yunxin shout at him after Lord Dongting, "Thief! Look at me. Am I Li Yunxin?" This cultivator wanted to spit out a mouthful of blood. thinking that these two demons had joined hands to plot against him. He pointed at Li Yunxin. You Li Yunxin, you. Li Yunxin didn't look at him anymore. With a sad smile, he turned to Lord Dongting and said, My lord, please restrain this evil cultivator and listen to me. After I finish, my lord, you may want me to confront him. At this time, the three mortals were so scared that they almost fainted. They could only lie on the ground and shiver. Lord Dongting waved his hand again, and Song Yunzi was immediately wrapped in a watery light. An emptiness realm cultivator couldn't hear, see, or speak, and could only stand still. This 3,000-year-old great demon looked at Li Yunxin and said, My friend, don't panic. Tell me in detail. Asterisk. Note 1, silk cloak. You can see it in the paintings of flying apsaras, or in the paintings of immortals. It's the thing wrapped around the arm. There are also non-mainstream people who use snakes as silk cloaks. Chapter 128. Li Yunxin also looked at Lord Dongting, took a deep breath, and said loudly, That friend of mine is the Wei River Dragon King, who showed his divinity in the city of Wei a few days ago. He called himself the 9th Young Master. He was the one who told me the way to eat meat. That day I was practicing. Li Yunxin talked about the deep friendship between him and the 9th Young Master. When he talked about the emotional part, he choked a few times and couldn't control himself. I was killed by that Lu Ling, so I don't know much about other things. But later I learned that Lu Ling had a fight with a big demon. I think that the big demon probably has something powerful in her hands. So the two of them had an internal conflict. This majestic Lord Dongting listened to him quietly, and his expression changed. That feather robe. He sighed slightly. It was because of that feather robe. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned, but he didn't say anything. When he died that day, Lu Ling destroyed his soul. When the two of them fought out of the city, he started to reconstruct his soul. So he only knew that his plan had succeeded. But there were some things he didn't know. For example, Lord Dongting's words. But now, it seemed that it was a lucky hit. Li Yunxin frowned. What feather robe? This majestic Lord Dongting didn't know what was on his mind. He hesitated for a while, and then said, That big demon is not a big demon in this mortal world. Her adoptive father is the golden-winged roc, the master of all feathers in the world. This Bai Yunxin feeds on scale worms, and her favorite is Dragon Sun. He sighed again. Although I don't know where the golden-winged roc king lives, I know it's not in this mortal world. That Bai Yunxin needs that feather robe to go in and out of her own home. But 1,000 years ago, her feather robe was snatched away by a Taoist priest surnamed Niu from Daotong. So she couldn't go back. For the past 1,000 years, she's been trying to find her treasure. Now, sigh. A robe of feathers. Li Yunxin kept this in mind. He realized that this could be one of the key factors in deciding the outcome of the battle. Lord Dongting suddenly rolled his eyes and sat down slowly. Since you're already dead, how did you manage to cultivate this in-spirit body? He asked slowly. What you've said makes sense. But, how did you know to find me? This was the most crucial and fatal problem. Li Yunxin had almost no information about Lord Dongting. He only had one way, to let the great demon answer him himself. The 9th Young Master rarely mentions Jun Shang. As he said this, he quickly glanced at Lord Dongting's expression and immediately added, In fact, I hardly said it. In this world, I'm probably the only friend who's ever heard news about Jun Shang from him. He regarded me as his confidant and said that he often felt lonely. We're like-minded. Although he's moody sometimes, I know his true nature. Speaking of this, Lord Dongting was still sitting upright. Li Yunxin said, Even so, he probably only told me. He's an arrogant person. He hides his feelings in his heart, and is afraid that others will laugh at him if he tells them. However, there was only one time. He drank too much and said that in this Wei River, there's only one person that he wants to be close to, but can't. As soon as he said this, Lord Dongting's expression changed. Thus, Li Yunxin knew that he had caught the point. You said you were close friends with him. Do you have any proof? Lord Dongting's two whiskers trembled slightly. Proof? His reaction made Li Yunxin slightly surprised. He was very confident in his own ability. He didn't think it was a great thing to observe the other person's expression and tone, then quickly adjust his response and get the information he wanted in the end. But he is still a little surprised by Lord Dongting's obvious emotional outpouring. When he found out that Li Daozhang was Lord Dongting, he felt that he was in a terrible crisis. A 3,000-year-old great demon. The ninth young master even tacitly allowed him to exist for such a long time and have such a palace in Mount June. In his impression, this Lord Dongting should be a terrible existence with infinite supernatural power, profound shrewdness, and even a trace of his smile has ulterior motives. However, after the verbal attack, he realized Lord Dongting wasn't the level he imagined. He wasn't stupid. In fact, he was more vigilant and smarter than many people. As a demon, he could even be called moderate and peaceful, almost human. But he didn't look like an old demon who had lived for 3,000 years and had seen many things. Li Yunxin keeps this in mind and realizes that her previous reaction was a bit extreme. If she had known that Lord Dongting was like this, she wouldn't have been so angry. But there was no perfect plan in the world. Everything could be adjusted. Now he understood. Maybe Lord Dongting and the ninth young master had some inside story or misunderstanding. The ninth young master didn't want to mention him, but Lord Dongting was excited because of that one sentence. So he breathed a sigh of relief, put his hand into his clothes, and took out the reverse scale. This thing was actually the key to lead him to the position of Qi. Now that he had returned to the position, this reverse scale was just a souvenir. Li Yunxin didn't think about why he brought it with him, but it really came in handy at this moment. He put the reverse scale on the table in front of Lord Dongting, saying, but when the words came to his mouth, he hesitated for a while. Maybe it was because he knew Lord Dongting wasn't as terrible as he had imagined, at least in terms of character and shrewdness. He suddenly felt a little dispirited. He suddenly didn't want to talk. Maybe it was because of this reason, but it wasn't because of anything else. But he had to say it. He had to pull himself together, continue to breathe, and use some hints to cheer himself up again, to forget the little episode just now, and sadly said, he gave me this reverse scale. Make me a close-fitting armor. After I died, I entered the samsara, but I don't know why my soul was attached to this reverse scale. After he died, he still protected me. Because of this, I thought. I came to Dongting Lake to look for him. I met these 3 people by chance, and heard them talking about Lord Dongting. So I asked Taoist Li if the palace he built on Mount June had anything to do with Lord Dongting. Maybe it was the blessing of the ninth young master in heaven. I really met Lord Dongting. Hearing his words, Lord Dongting was silent for a while. Then he just stared at the reverse scale on the table, without touching it. After a long time he said, did he really say he wanted to be close to him, but he couldn't? Yes. Lord Dongting was silent for a while, and the green light around him gradually dimmed. Then he waved his hand. You can take this reverse scale back. You can also take this Taoist priest away. He sighed again. As he sighed, dense water vapor rose from his mouth and nose. This reminded Li Yunxin of an incense burner, or the ninth young master who stared at him that night before he died. I have known him for some years. Now that I summoned him here, I want to ask him about this. Since you have made it clear, you can deal with him. Lord Dongting sighed again. This time, his whole body was shrouded in water vapor, and his face was almost invisible. Li Yunxin didn't know if it was a demon crying. Chapter 129. But he still tries to finish the last part. He is silent for a while, cooperating with the sadness of this big demon. He doesn't know why he is so sad. Maybe it's because this demon is a different species and born to be sentimental. Or maybe sometimes, demons are actually simpler and more sensitive than humans. He suddenly remembers that night when the ninth young master looked at him and talked to him before he died. The mist rose from his nostrils and ears. At that time he thought he was angry. After a few seconds, Lord Dongting suddenly stretches out a shiny hand from the mist and waves to Tsong Yunzi. The layer of water light on the cultivator retracts, as if it has merged into his body. Song Yunzi wakes up and yells as soon as he opens his eyes. I don't know everything about what Lu Ling did. But Lord Dongting doesn't seem to want to listen to this cultivator anymore. With another wave of his hand, a gust of demonic wind rose from the flat ground, carrying Li Yunxin, Song Yunzi, Ding Zhaoen's son, the three of them, through the window of the main hall, straight down the mountain. After a breath of time, the five of them were already in a dense forest. Looking at the distance, they see Dongting in the night and the smell of water. The three mortals are so scared that they can't speak. They are still trembling on the ground, as if they will fall from the sky if they stand up. Li Yunxin glances at them and says in a low voice, If you don't leave now, you will die. If you want to live, don't talk about what happened today. Seeing that the legs of the three people are still weak, he snorts and waves his sleeves. Another gust of demon wind rises and rolls the three people into the lake. After being stimulated by the cold water, the three people finally wake up. They cry and paddle in the water. Their voices can be heard far in the night. After finishing these things, Li Yunxin turns to look at Song Yunzi standing opposite. This cultivator of the school seems to be very surprised. He can't believe that Lord Dongting put him down the mountain like this. He even closes his eyes slightly and feels the wacken flowing in his body for a while. Then he suddenly shows a cruel smile in the night. Then he said, Brat, your time of death has come. Li Yunxin blinked. Huh. Do you think that the Lord Dongting has placed a restriction on me and imprisoned my magic power? Song Yunzi slowly reached his hand into his sleeve, as if he was searching for something. Idiot. He injected demonic energy into me and temporarily increased my power. Hee. It seems like he doesn't completely believe your words. You see. How am I going to teach you a lesson, you little bastard? As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled out his hand from his sleeve and flung it towards Li Yunxin. With a loud bang, flames rose in front of Li Yunxin. Damn it! Li Yunxin cursed in a low voice and turned to run. But he didn't use his demon power or magic. He just ran to the other side of the shore. Mount June is in the Dongting Lake, but it is actually a peninsula separated from the mainland by the lake water. Therefore, the distance between Mount June and the shore of Dongting Lake is not far. People who are good at swimming can reach the other side in 10 minutes. On this side of Mount June Island, you can even hear the shouts of people on the other side. Li Yunxin ran at a speed that Song Yunzi could just keep up with. The cultivator chased after him. Although Danding School of Shangqing is Daotong, it seems to have a unique personal ability. At least Li Yunxin now feels that Song Yunzi is a mobile arsenal. He continuously took out bullets from his sleeve and threw them at himself. Occasionally, he would put one or two into his mouth. It's very unhygienic. Li Yunxin ran to the shore. He could jump into the water or use his holy spell to cross the river. But he didn't do so. He was just like a person who was really anxious, but didn't dare to go into the water. He ran with Song Yunzi for a while before he finally saw a small sampan half submerged in the water in a field of acorns. Then he jumped on the sampan, exerted his strength, stood on it, and went straight to the other side. Song Yunzi chased after him all the way and kept cursing. At this time, seeing that he ran away, he scolded him even more, scolding him for being afraid of water and death. He would be tortured to death later. He scolded but didn't stop. He took out a figure from his sleeve, which looked like a treasure bag, dipped it in saliva, and pressed it on his forehead. Then he jumped into the water and continued to chase after Li Yunxin. The sampan soon reached the other side. Li Yunxin abandoned the boat and went ashore. He went straight into the woods on the shore. The feeling disappeared. The faint feeling of being shrouded by the monster power of Lord Dongting on Mount June just now disappeared. Song Yunzi followed him into the woods and scolded even louder. As soon as he saw Li Yunxin, he pounced on him. You lonely ghost, where are you going? Li Yunxin raised his hand and slapped him. Song Yunzi's words were immediately pulled back, and 2 front teeth flew out of his mouth. Shut up, idiot. Li Yunxin slapped him to the ground and didn't look at him. Instead, he walked 2 steps out of the woods. He frowned slightly and looked at Mount June in the distance to make sure that he was completely free from the monitoring of Lord Dongting's monster power. Song Yunzi was dizzy on the ground for a while before he woke up. He couldn't accept this sudden change. But soon he tried to get up from the ground and wanted to take out more bullets from his sleeve. But Li Yunxin had already walked back into the woods. He kicked him again. Tell me, what's wrong with Lu Ling's Dharma body? Song Yunzi was an emptiness state cultivator. He had tempered his spirit and body with the divine heart technique for dozens of years. The so-called first-class masters in the secular world were nothing in his eyes. He could stand there and let his opponent hit him, but he couldn't be hurt at all. Moreover, the divine heart technique was a brilliant righteous path that was most effective against ghost cultivators. But this kind of body was kicked by Li Yunxin until he couldn't move. Song Yunzi didn't understand what was going on. Lord Dongting had clearly given him some monster power, and he was even stronger than usual. But Li Yunxin knew what was going on. He picked a smooth big green stone and sat down. He sighed and scolded in a low voice. Damn demon. Judging from the short contact just now, Mr. Dongting is the most human-like demon he has ever seen. Although his real face was still strange, he could feel sadness, nervousness, and excitement. He would even invite people to a banquet, although he would eat human flesh. For a moment, he felt that a powerful demon like Dongting Jun, who has lived for thousands of years, could be called a human being. Until just now, that demon was sincerely sad for the death of the ninth young master, and at the same time, he injected some monster power into Song Yunzi. Then he sent both of them down the mountain. He just wanted them to fight and kill each other. This demon might believe what Li Yunxin said was true, but he was still a little suspicious. He didn't care about the fact that he was Little Nine's best friend. If he died, so be it. Demon's sadness was focused and single-minded. He was only sad for Little Nine, and it had nothing to do with other things. Maybe Li Yunxin would kill Song Yunzi. Then he didn't care. He was only a little suspicious anyway. In essence, he looked like a human, but he still wouldn't see a human as a human. Song Yunzi didn't know what he was thinking. He was still immersed in his little world of surprise and despair. Until Li Yunxin asked him again, the cultivator said, "But you are already dead." He shouted in disbelief. "You are just a wild ghost for a few days." Li Yunxin sighed again, stood up, walked over, and smashed his head with one palm. "You are a King wild ghost. I am Wei River Dragon King." The headless body of the Taoist priest swayed for a while, and fell to the ground, blood gushing out. Li Yunxin reached out again, and grabbed Song Yunzi's ghost, holding it in his hand to stop it from leaving. This ghost retained his obsession before death, and only screamed mournfully, "Only a few days. Only a few days." Li Yunxin ignored him, but returned to sit on the big blue stone, and waited patiently. Note, Yin God. Ghost cultivators, animals that become spirits, demons and mythological beasts born from the yin and yang of the sky, can all be called Yin God. Chapter 130. It was just nightfall. There was a breeze and water vapor. The smell in the forest was also pleasant. Of course, only for Li Yunxin. Many of the smells that he liked in the past had not changed, but now there were more. For example, the sweet smell of the blood from the Taoist's body was very pleasant. Mixed with the fragrance of the grass, there was a feeling of peace and comfort. If he looked into the distance, he could vaguely see the lights on Egret Island. He did not know if the three people swam back. But soon the night fog rose. The lights on Egret Island were hidden in the fog. Mount June was also faintly visible in the fog. There was a faint light on the top of the mountain. It should be the back hall of the School of the Emperor's Star. The moonlight was bright, and the scene in front of him was beautiful and quiet. It was hard to imagine that in such a beautiful scene, there were several big demons who liked to eat human flesh. After waiting for a quarter of an hour, Li Yunxin looked away. The person he was looking for was here. He glanced at the person, who was 2 steps away from him, and exclaimed, "Why is it you? Is this guy a good guy?" Bai Yanjun walked a few steps in front of him without making a sound. He looked at Li Yunxin for a while, clapped his hands and said in a high-pitched voice, "Good, good. This method is really effective." Li Yunxin thought for a while and said, If I understand correctly, you mean, you did it after all. Bai Yanjun did not care and changed the topic without any apology. You caught the Taoist soul, waiting for me to come? Li Yunxin stared at him for a while without any expression and said nothing. He was probably the first person in the world to ignore Bai Yanjun's question. After a few seconds of awkward deadlock, Bai Yanjun waved his hand and said, "Forget it. I happen to have something to talk to you about, so I won't argue with you. Tell me, why are you looking for me?" Li Yunxin still did not speak and only stared at him. Bai Yanjun was a little angry. "You really don't know what's good for you. What else do you want? If you don't say anything, I'm leaving. I'll leave this Taoist priest soul to you." Li Yunxin laughed. "Look at you, a dignified Yama lord, but you're acting like a child. I was just admiring your tongue. How could I not speak?" "Then don't be angry, don't be angry. Can you do me a favor? I want to know something from this Taoist priest, but I'm too lazy to interrogate him by torture. Please help me." Bai Yanjun looked at Li Yunxin and pretended to tap his forehead with his finger. After 3 to 4 times he said, "You little brat, now that you've seized Dragon Sun's body, you actually dare to make fun of me." Li Yunxin spread his hands. "We're already sworn brothers. There's no need to be so formal." Bai Yanjun shook his head. "Humph. Only women and villains are hard to raise. You too." After sighing with emotion, he hesitated for a moment before walking in front of Song Yunzi's soul. When this soul saw the Yama Lord, he seemed to know that it was time to go on his way, so he stopped making noise. This time, Bai Yanjun stretched out his hand and tapped his forehead. "What do you want to ask?" Li Yunxin thought for a moment. "To be honest, I want to know everything in his mind." Bai Yanjun rolled his eyes at him. "You're dreaming. Then, let's talk about what happens after I die." Bai Yanjun seemed to be surprised that he suddenly lowered his standards, but he did not say anything. He only reached into the chest of the Taoist priest's soul and took out a ball of green light, just like when Li Yunxin first saw him in his dream. Then, he threw the green light at Li Yunxin, and it disappeared into his body. After waiting for a breath, he asked, "Are you satisfied?" Li Yunxin's expression changed. After a while, he let out a long sigh. "Thank you. Then let's talk about me." Bai Yanjun pulled out a metal chain from his sleeve and locked the Taoist priest's soul as he spoke. "Do you know how I take the souls of many people in this world?" But Li Yunxin seemed to have something else on his mind. He only replied casually, "Oh, I don't know. Tell me about it." Bai Yanjun did not mind. He only said, "There are some important people who can affect the world. For example, the Emperor of Li Kingdom. I have to take him myself. The Li Kingdom is vast and has a large population. If the Emperor of Li Kingdom dies, the news will spread too fast, and it will be taken too late. His soul will be blessed by the wishes of millions of people, and in the blink of an eye, he will become a powerful ghost king. This is the power that can affect the world. Similarly, I have to take care of the emperors and dignitaries of the various countries personally. Although I can have thousands of incarnations, there is still a limit. And I have 2 kinds of incarnations. One is like this one today. I can talk to you and act according to the situation, just like my original self. As for the other kind, I can only take people, just puppets. The ordinary people and the unimportant ones are taken by my incarnations." At this point, Li Yunxin was indeed a little interested. "Then that night in the city of Wei, the day I met you for the first time outside the city, why did you come in person? Just listen to me. Why do you have so many questions?" Bai Yanjun rolled his eyes at him again. Li Yunxin knew that his question had touched on something important that he did not want to answer. Or perhaps it made this Bai Yanjun feel awkward again. There are also some people who have some influence, but are not that important. It is not good to waste the energy of my incarnations to take them, and it is easy to make mistakes with the puppet incarnations. So I need someone to do it for me. This person is the judge of the Yang world. Bai Yanjun nodded at Li Yunxin. "For example, you are a great demon in the Wei River. You have gained intelligence, know some things, and have demon spells to hide your traces. So you can be the judge of the Yang world." After saying this, he paused for a while. as if he was waiting for Li Yunxin's reaction. Sure enough, Li Yunxin was neither excited nor happy. Instead, he was afraid that he would harm him. He frowned and thought for a while before saying, "Why don't you find someone to do it? For example, a Taoist priest? You can also teach them some spells. A demon is a demon after all. Humans? Humans are not as good as demons to do this kind of thing." Bai Yanjun sneered. "You think I have never tried humans? However, that person loves to bend the law for personal gain and abuse his power for personal gain. In the end, the world is in a foul atmosphere. You are talking about demons. Although demons are cruel, they have gained intelligence and are trained well, so they are more useful than humans. In their eyes, humans are the same as pigs and dogs. They won't do such dirty things like humans. They don't have any gossips." Li Yunxin frowned. "I don't like what you are saying. How can humans be pigs and dogs? Even a demon would have to take human form, right? Besides, I, the Dragon King, was also a human. How can you not worry about me? Demons take human form because the meridians of a human form are the easiest to use spells. But apart from cultivators, normal people will die with a touch, and even a small hole in their body won't live. How do you think demons see them? You say demons like to eat humans. Let me ask you, in your Qing kingdom, what kind of animal is the easiest to find and hunt? Isn't it humans? They don't know how to dig holes, and they don't like to dive. As for you," Bai Yanjun suddenly laughed shrilly and pointed at Li Yunxin, as if he found it very funny. "You are such a treacherous, cunning, and heartless person. How can I not be at ease?" Hearing this, Li Yunxin stared at him for a while. He seemed to want to say something, but was speechless. After watching the White Hell Lord laugh for a while, he suddenly laughed as well. He closed his eyes for a while, then opened them again. Good, good, good. Please continue." Chapter 131. Bai Yanjun looked at him and shook his head slightly. He seemed to think that Li Changshou's idea was ridiculous. But he quickly said, "Therefore, the position of judge of the Yang world can be given to you in the Wei River. There are some people that you took for me. Although I can't give you any benefits now, you won't lose out in the future." Li Yunxin thought for a while. "Why not Lord Dongting?" The answer was as he expected. "Humph, I can order whoever I want to do it. Why must it be him?" Li Yunxin sighed. "Fine. Sounds good, although you might still be tricking me. But I can try. Give me the book." Bai Yanjun frowned. "When did I promise you anything?" Li Yunxin raised his eyebrows in surprise. "The Book of Life and Death? The Book of Merits and Virtues? Don't you have such a thing? Remembering people's lifespan and good deeds. Without that, how can I carry out my work?" Hearing this, Bai Yanjun was stunned for a while. Then he suddenly laughed wildly. His long tongue trembled like a red silk in the wind. He seemed to really find it funny. So much so that his figure was a bit blurry, and his outline was flickering. Li Yunxin sat quietly on the green stone and watched him laugh. After Bai Yanjun laughed for a quarter of an hour, he finally stopped and pointed at Li Yunxin. "You devil, oh ha ha ha. Do you really think there's a book of life and death? Or a book of merits and virtues?" For that mortal," Li Yunxin said calmly. "When I first saw you in my dream, I saw you two take out a small book and say that I wasn't on it. If you want to say that, oh, it's barely a book of life and death." Bai Yanjun seemed to want to laugh again. "But how many people can be recorded in such a small book? Do you really think it's a treasure? Let me tell you now. There are only those emperors, ministers, and literary giants I mentioned before in the book." Afraid that he would make a mistake, he used this notebook to record it. If you notice that one day that person is about to die or has already died, you will quickly collect his soul. Discovered? Dying or already dead? Li Yunxin interrupted him. "What do you mean?" Bai Yanjun found it even more hilarious. TSK, you demonic human, do you really believe in life and death? You're the same as those ignorant mortals. Do you really think that I have a book in my hands that records how many months and days people die, how many good and bad things they've done in this life, and whether they reincarnate as humans or animals? Li Yunxin looked at him calmly. "No, of course not. Doesn't that mean that there are people who do bad things in this life and enjoy glory and splendor and wealth, but there will be no retribution in the next life. Some people do good deeds in this life, but end up in a miserable state, and they don't have any good fortune in their next life? Bai Yanjun giggled. Of course not, of course not. He seemed to be very happy as he stroked his long tongue. Rather, some people do bad things in this life and enjoy glory and splendor and wealth, and they want to enjoy that glory and splendor even more in their next life. Some people do good deeds in this life and end up in a miserable state, and they want to continue doing good deeds in their next life. Hearing this, Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Then he raised his head and asked, "You're not joking with me?" Bai Yanjun stared at him mockingly. "I'm not in the mood for that." It was unknown what Li Yunxin was thinking, but he was silent for a long time before he said, "Can you tell me? I really want to know." "Hee, your reaction is quite interesting." Bai Yanjun circled around him and suddenly leaned close to him. "I thought you, demonic human, would clap your hands in joy when you find out about this." Li Yunxin didn't say anything. Seeing him like this, Bai Yanjun straightened up. "Then I'll tell you. But after I tell you, you'll have to become a judge of the young world. If you know about these things and still want to shirk responsibility, I'll really have to deal with you." "Fine. Then listen carefully. I'm in charge of matters of life and death, but I'm not only in charge of matters of life and death. Whether a person does good or bad, good or evil, they're just minor details. The most important thing is to see what kind of impact they have on this world. For example, an evil person was born in troubled times. When he was young, he ran amok in the countryside, harming the common people. When he was young, he raped and pillaged, becoming a tyrant in the marketplace. When he was middle-aged, this evil person gathered a group of bandits in the mountains and forests to rob pedestrians. Later, he slowly gained power and began to fight for the throne. In the end, this person became the emperor. He cruelly slaughtered the loyal and good people, levied taxes and collected exorbitant taxes. He could be considered an evil person, but he ended the troubled times and allowed the common people to begin to recuperate. This is a great merit. I don't care about how many good people he harmed. As long as he can increase the number of people in this world, it's useful. With such a person's luck, he came to hell after his death to be reincarnated. He already has the luck to be a good person and an emperor, so he's naturally more skilled than the average person. Do you think I should ask him to join the emperor's family? For example, there are some people who are even more thoroughly evil. They're born into the ranks of officials and nobles, but they only know how to prey on the common people and corrupt the laws of the court. They truly don't have the slightest bit of benefit to this world. But at this time, when he's already at the end of his life, he still needs such a person to do evil after his death. Who else could be more skilled than him? Naturally, he'd still have to join the official's family. Li Yunxin listened quietly, and his expression was inscrutable. After a moment of thought, he asked calmly, "In other words, when a person's soul is reincarnated, their memories are erased, and they're reincarnated again. Some things can't be erased cleanly. It'll be easier to reincarnate with this kind of imprint and do the same thing." Bai Yanjun nodded. "That's exactly it. Then, why not let a good person do it?" Li Yunxin asked. "There must be someone who's capable but not so bad." Bai Yanjun blinked. "How powerful do you think I am? There are so many variables in this world. How do you know which small thing will affect the overall situation? What I can do is only to check the direction and luck of a certain place at a certain time. Then, I'll use this luck to guide it. For example, that evil person just now. It's not like I want him to be the emperor. He's lucky and has already conquered a piece of land. Among the people who are vying for the throne, he's the most likely to succeed. Do you think I should waste my energy to support another person? Even if this matter is done, there are many things in this world. Just looking at the direction and luck of the situation is enough to exhaust my magical power. How can I have the time to care about whether he's a good person or an evil person?" Li Yunxin sighed slightly. "So that's how it is. So that person's death. It's indeed you who wants him to die. You may think that the general trend has reached a certain point and he should die. Most of the time, it's just that when he dies, you go and get the soul." "Exactly. Li Yunxin stood up and stroked the bamboo fan in his hand. He looked into the distance for a while. No one knew what he was looking at. Then he said in a low voice, "So in this world, there's really no good or evil or justice?" At this time, Bai Yanjun seemed to be really curious. He stared at Li Yunxin for a while, and then asked, "Do you really care about those things?" Li Yunxin pursed his lips and walked 2 steps to the edge of the woods. With one hand behind his back, he looked at the Dongting Lake in the distance. After watching for a while in the mist, he turned around and smiled. "My friend, I think you may have some misunderstandings about me." The night was heavy. His hair and long eyelashes were stained with tiny droplets of water, making him look damp and cold. He thought for a while, and seemed to be organizing his words. After a while he said, "I already knew what the world was like. There is no benevolence, justice or morality in this world. Not to mention benevolence, justice or morality. There is no good or evil, justice or fairness. For example, this Daqing state, or later, people became more powerful, and made a United States, a federal state, or a republic. When you walk on the road, you can see officers. If someone does something bad, he will be arrested. Then he will be judged and punished. When you walk in the school, you can hear the teachers talking about morality and justice. You also know that the world is in good order. But in essence, where do those people have the power to punish those who do bad things? They rob. When they rob and succeed, no one punishes them. When the emperor of a country or the court does something very bad, no one punishes them. If they are bad enough and strong enough, they can always get away with it. In this world, there is indeed justice in some details. But in most parts, in essence, there is no justice. It's the naked dark world of the jackal. All justice and justice are built on plunder and power. I have heard a saying before, there is no good fruit on a poisonous tree. But this real world is indeed an abnormal existence. On the rotten soil, there is a seemingly sweet fruit. Bai Yanjun listened to him, and could not help but clap his hands in praise. "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You are a rare person who understands." "No wonder." Li Yunqin laughed and shook his head, interrupting him. "I haven't finished. Since I know this truth, then I also understand some other things. The distinction between good and evil, justice and justice in this world, is extremely important. Some fools think that this world is like this, and there is no need for order or morality. Not only do they do bad things, but they also snort at justice and justice while doing it. This kind of person, even if I meet him, I will kill him. You want to ask me why? Because he will not let me live well. That emperor, that noble official, do not know the essence of this world, but they insist that people believe in benevolence, righteousness and morality, because such things do not exist. If people do not even believe in it, the world will be in chaos. They also have to spend more effort to suppress and pacify people, so that they can live happily. Those nobles have the capital to suppress and pacify people, to protect themselves in the chaos, but they still have to pretend. Those evil people among the commoners, once everyone is like him, not afraid of any order or morality, the world will be in chaos. How can he get any benefits? How can he live? Maybe the person he ridiculed as old-fashioned and stupid will be the first to kill him. This kind of person benefits from order and morality, but does not know it. Instead, he will be ridiculed by those who think they are smart. That is evil and stupid. I hate stupid people more than evil people. I kill one when I see one. Bai Yanjun frowned slightly. "Hey, what do you want to say?" Li Yunxin reached out to wipe the dew on his temples, smiling faintly. "It is just that after listening to what you said, I felt a little emotional. Because I always felt that there is no retribution in this world. Maybe there will be after death. Now that I know that there will be no retribution after death, I feel that this world is really dark. It makes people feel a little desperate. But the main reason is to tell you clearly what will happen next. If you want to be a judge of my world, I can do it. But I realize that you seem to have some misunderstanding about me. Maybe you still want to plot something from me. So I have to make it clear in advance, so that we will not be embarrassed in the future. It will not be good to be friends." Bai Yanjun seemed to be so angry that he wanted to laugh. "Friend? You are the first person who dares to talk to me like this. I want to hear. What do you want to say? What did I misunderstand you? You said that I am sinister, cunning, and heartless. Li Yunxin stopped smiling, looking at him. I do not accept this. Bai Yanjun laughed. You devil, think about all the things you have done in the past. How can you not bear these words? Is that so? Li Yunxin stepped forward, tapped his palm with the folding fan, walked slowly and said slowly, My friend, then think about it. According to the principle of justice, should the 6 ghosts in the river, who killed mortals to pass the tribulation, die? The prefectural magistrate Li Yaoxi has always been corrupt and perverted the law. He likes to beat people to confess, and he wants to kill me for the property. Should he die? Xiao Jiaming, who usually walks the streets and prescribes some unknown prescriptions, is complacent after curing people to death. Should he die? The big and the little Qiao, who murdered people for the family property, and had an affair with Xiao Jiaming, which disrupted the ethics. Should he die? Long Taoyi, the official of the prefectural magistrate, colluded with the little Qiao, disrupted the justice and disregarded human life. Should he die? The 9th dragon's son ate people indiscriminately. I was also a human at that time, so I was different from him. Should I die? Lu Ling also doesn't care about the lives of mortals. He knows that I may die if he takes me back to the mountain, but he doesn't care very much. Should I die? The White Hell Lord was slightly taken aback by the series of questions he had thrown at him. Then he snorted. What about the child beggar? The child beggar that you gave him longevity? Li Yunxin smiled. The child beggar can't see, and his body is weak. He can't live for another year or 2. He walks on the street without food and clothing, and is laughed at by people. Is there any joy in being a human? I want him to be a ghost, and give him longevity. I want him to become a ghost cultivator. What's the problem? Bai Yanjun mocked him again. Do you want to say that you do these things selflessly and are a very good person? Good person? I'm not a good person. Li Yunxin shook his head and smiled. As for selfishness, of course I have selfishness. Why would I make these troubles if not for selfishness? I just want to tell you, my friend, that I am evil order, not evil chaos. Maybe you don't understand what it means. Let's put it this way. At least in this life, I have the moral values of a normal person. Well, I can't say that I do. I can only say that I can understand the moral values of a normal person, and I admire this moral value. It's because of this moral value that I can eat delicious food and see beautiful scenery. That Lord Dongting eats people in moderation is also because of this. Because I understand and admire it, I will try to respect it when possible. For example, if I want to die today, I don't mind spending some effort to find someone who deserves to die. But if I can't find the evil person, and only one good person dies, I won't stop doing it. You know I'm not a good person. But I will try to give him some compensation. It's not because of my moral sense. In fact, for some reason, I don't really understand it. It's just because. This way the world will be better. If the world is better, I will live better. Someone doesn't play by the rules, which means that he doesn't want the world to be better. Then, he won't let me live better. If he doesn't let me live better, he will die. Li Yunxin pondered for a while, then looked up at Bai Yanjun in the night. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. I have my own principles when I do things. Although I can't understand the so-called normal morality, I have a self-consistent theoretical system, which is attached to this set of morality. You can say that I'm not a good person, but I have my own way of doing things. Now that you want me to be a judge of the young world, I can accept it. But don't expect me to act like a demon. Even if I'm a demon, I, Li Yunxin, am also a human demon. Bai Yanjun spoke after a while, but the sarcasm on his face was gone. Oh, you. I've underestimated you, he said hesitantly, which was rare. Interesting. Although I don't agree with all your principles, it's still acceptable. After a while he frowned again. I'm plotting against you? That's the biggest joke in the world. He suddenly took out an iron chain and a thin blue booklet from his bosom and tossed them to Li Yunxin. Take them. After saying this, he grabbed the Taoist priest's soul and disappeared in a flash. But Li Yunxin was already used to this Yama King's unpredictable style, so he didn't think much of it. He took the iron chain and the thin booklet and examined them for a while. He realized that the iron chain was used to capture souls, and the thin booklet seemed to remember the person he needed to capture, as well as some small rules. Li Yunxin held the folding fan, the iron chain and the thin booklet, and sat back down on the big green rock. The sound of insects gradually rang out again. He sat in silence for a while, then opened the folding fan. The surface of the fan was empty and white. He placed the iron chain and the thin booklet on the surface of the fan, then disappeared. Then he closed the fan again. Chapter 132. This fan was his temporary imperial residence. Before Li Yunxin took over the position of Dragon Son, he was prepared to have a strange temporary imperial residence. But when he woke up the next day, he found this bamboo fan beside him. However, this item was to his liking. It looked elegant and unobtrusive. But now was not the time to care about the temporary imperial residence. Bai Yanjun gave him some of Song Yunzi's memories. He realized that things might be more complicated than he thought. Some of the previous plans needed to be adjusted. Song Yunzi and Daoist Li had known each other for more than 2 years. They often had a feast together. Lord Dongting was a great fiendish demon with an eccentric personality. He also liked to eat people, but he ate in moderation and regularly. Every month, he ate one person to satisfy his appetite. He also invited famous people nearby to eat together. He told a story first. When he was satisfied, he went to the middle hall. He was so powerful that Song Yunzi's mind was bewitched for 2 years. The cultivator didn't know that he ate human flesh. If it was a cultivator with a bit of intelligence, he would have noticed something unusual about Daoist Li. Li Yunxin tried to use a few seconds to think about the reason why Lord Dongting did this. But he soon realized it was useless. After all, the mind of a demon was different from that of a human. He might have a purpose, or it was just for fun. That day, Song Yunzi found Lu Ling's body outside the city of Wei. He tried everything he could to save her, but he couldn't do anything. Lu Ling's ocean of qi and mountain of snow had collapsed. She seemed to have died. Her soul was not found. It should have been taken away by Yama. So he brought her body back to the residence of the Shangqing Danding sect in the city of Wei, and waited anxiously. Although a Void Realm cultivator like him indeed had no way or qualification to stop Fairy Ling Kong from doing anything, if someone from the Langya Paradise were to come and vent their anger on him out of grief, he would not be able to bear the consequences. After a day of suffering, he thought of Daoist Li, so he told a few children not to blaspheme the fairy's body. Then he hurried to Mount June. When he arrived at Mount June, he met with Daoist Li and told him what to do. At this point, Li Yunxin felt that this matter was a little strange. That Lord Dongting seemed to be very affectionate towards Dragon Son. That night, when Long Sun faced off against Lu Ling, the first strike was already earth-shattering. It was understandable that the mortals of Egret Continent were far away and couldn't see it. But how could a 3,000-year-old demon not know that there was a terrifying fluctuation of spiritual qi in the city of Wei? Why didn't you go and help? After that, the Lord Dongting listened to Yunzi's words and asked for some details. Song Yunzi didn't know about it, so he could only evade it. Although he came to ask Taoist Li for advice, he also knew that this matter was related to Daodong's secret. Although his mind was bewitched, he still had his spiritual sense. How could he reveal everything? But it was that little bit of vigilance that had harmed him that night. However, after Yunzi and Daoist Li talked about those things, he slowly calmed down and realized that this Daoist Li didn't seem to be able to help. So he returned to the city of Wei. And at that time, the Lord Dongting probably wanted to cast a long line, catch a big fish and slowly get the details. But the appearance of Li Yunxin ruined his plan. Another 2 or 3 days passed and today came. Song Yunzi found that Lu Ling's body was missing. As a cultivator, his first thought was that someone had taken it and was planning to make it into a puppet. Cultivators tempered their spirits and bodies. Even after death, the body would still maintain an extremely high level of strength. For a cultivator at the peak of the transcendent state like Lu Ling, Even if the body was left out in the open, it would not rot for a year. A body like this was the best material to be made into a puppet. Song Yunzi felt anxious when he thought of this possibility. He could imagine how the cultivator from the grotto heaven would not have thought of this. Once he knew that this was the case, his life would really be in danger. Because in his residence, the remains were gone. Li Yunxin now knew these things. He also knew that the Lord Dongting had unusual feelings for the dragon son. He also knew that the feather coat was very important to Bai Yunxin. Then that big demon should not be far away. Someone from the grotto heaven was coming. The one who came must not be stupid, and his cultivation must be at least above Lu Ling's. The true state or the mysterious state. Cultivators above the true state were called Taoist Jinren. It was said that they had been reincarnated and proved the way of immortality. In the past, Li Yunxin thought this was probably true, but now he thought that maybe it was just that the Jinren above the true state were too difficult to kill. Even if Black Bai Yanjun wanted to kill them, it would take a lot of effort. According to his limited understanding of Bai Yanjun, that guy seemed to be afraid of trouble and would not bother to deal with those Jinren. All these factors were tangled together, making him sigh deeply while standing at the edge of the 1,000-mile Dongting. He planned to take over the body of Dragon Sun, then absorb believers in incense, and become an awe-inspiring Wei River Dragon King. Then he would use this demon's body to practice the arts of the painting school. No one ever said that demons couldn't practice the divine heart dharma. It was just that the unique origin of demons made it difficult for them to practice. Demons were roughly divided into 3 kinds. Demons like Bai Yunxin, the Golden-Winged Rock King, the 9th Young Master, and the Dragon God were congenital great demons. They were already extremely powerful as soon as they appeared in this world. They originally had demon power in their bodies. With people worshipping them, they would become stronger and stronger. But even if no one knew about them, they would not become weak. As time went by, their demon power would increase at a slow speed, just like the growth of human beings. Although the Dragon God, the Rock, and the Dragon Sun were called divine beasts. But in the eyes of cultivators, except for human beings, cultivators, and celestial beings, the existence with spiritual intelligence were all demons and in spirits. As for demons like Lord Dongting, he was a postnatal demon. They originally had bodies, birds, beasts, or fish. Because they were blessed and gained spiritual intelligence, they gradually cultivated into monsters and demons. These acquired demons were far weaker than the congenital demons. They were often beaten to death after transforming into human forms, because they used their spiritual power to transform, so they only knew some natural transformations. After transforming into human forms, they were almost no different from human beings. Because of various taboos, they often had to return to their original forms, and their cultivation was greatly reduced. All this was because these demons practiced the arts of spells they got from the unorthodox ways in the mortal world. Since it was a human's art of spells, it was easier to cultivate human meridians, so they had to transform into human forms. When they practiced in human form for a few days, and had supernatural powers, they could show off and get some incense. Most of the mountain gods, earth gods, and river gods in the mortal world were post-celestial demons. As for ghost cultivators, they were pretty much the same. They needed yang energy, the power of incense, and the power of faith. But the situation was a little special, and the third type of demons was the most special. They didn't originally exist. They were neither congenital nor acquired. They were created out of thin air. For example, for some reason, some people in a certain place believed in the existence of a mountain god. When this belief was firm to a certain extent, strong to a certain extent, wide to a certain extent, or long enough, then the mountain god was really created according to the strong power of faith of the believers. This type of demon completely relied on the power of faith to survive. They were also the best at absorbing and transforming the power of faith. The stronger the power of faith, the stronger the demon, even more powerful than the congenital and acquired demons who received the same amount of power of faith. And the weaker the power of faith, the weaker the demon. Once, even the last person didn't believe in him, he would disappear from this world. Li Yunxin's method of using the 300,000 yang energy in the city of Wei to reconstruct his spirit was probably inspired by an expert. So he needed an empty. Without the empty space, he wouldn't exist for long. And among these three types of demons, the congenital and acquired demons could all cultivate the heavenly heart technique. But first he had to empty his own demonic power. He only had the state, but no demonic power. The principle was as simple as emptying a bucket of water before filling it with wine. However, even though the logic was simple, how many post-celestial fiendish demons would happen to be able to cultivate the heavenly heart execution after transforming into human form? And how many congenital demons dared to disperse their demonic power and cultivate from the beginning? In the world of demons, they devoured and killed more than humans. But now, Li Yunxin's condition was the best time to cultivate the heavenly heart technique. He reconstructed the Qiyuan Dharma body, but without demonic power, it was an empty bucket. Therefore, it was very likely that he would become the world's first congenital demon to cultivate the heavenly heart technique. This was supposed to be a wonderful thing. Over the past few days, Tung Qingshan had cultivated his water cloud force to the emptiness realm without any effort. One must know that when he was reconstructing this body, the meridians in his body were all designed and constructed bit by him. Now that the meridians in his body were connected, he was already a peerless genius. But there was Lord Dongting, and the matter in Weiqing City had not been settled. If he wanted to show his divinity, cultivate the heavenly heart technique, and absorb the power of wish, he needed a comfortable environment. But now there were so many things that didn't go his way. Over the past few days, he had been walking back and forth between the city of Wei and the Egret state, just to sort out these clues. He wasn't afraid of facing dangers, but he was afraid of facing dangers that he didn't understand. And now, he felt that he already knew enough. Then it was time to move. For example, first, collect some power of wish to make himself stronger quickly. At least he wouldn't be killed by Lord Dongting, by Yunxin or anyone from Daotong. Li Yunxin stood by the lake and let out a breath and stretched. Because he had thought through some of the key points and had some plans, he felt slightly better. He couldn't help but smile as he muttered to himself, "Then I'll start a cult first." Chapter 133. A 4 or 5-year-old boy was playing under a weeping willow. He was pink and cute. The sun was high up in the sky, and it was cool under the tree. The boy was only wearing a red doo-doo, and had his hair tied into 2 buns. He was using the willow twig to whip around on the ground while looking at the tree. A young woman was sitting on a green stone, under the tree doing needlework. She would occasionally look at the boy with a happy smile on her face. But she gradually noticed that the boy's behavior was a little strange, so she followed his gaze and looked at the tree. But there was nothing. Only the morning sun shone through the gaps between the leaves. She quickly turned her head and asked the boy, Tuan, what are you looking at?" The boy ignored her and continued to stare at the tree. After a while he giggled. After laughing for a while, he pointed at the tree and replied to his mother, "This big brother." The young woman looked at the tree again, but she still couldn't see anything. She suddenly felt a chill in her heart. She felt that it was getting colder under the tree. She quickly got up and carried the boy away. As she walked, she looked at the tree a few more times. Of course, she couldn't see that Li Yunxin was sitting on a horizontal branch of the weeping willow. He was basking in the sun while lazily flipping through the thin book in his hand. This was the advantage of a Dharma body. The soul was condensed into a physical body, and one could touch and feel like a real person. With a thought, one could hide from a mortal's eyes like a ghost. Unless that person was born with yin and yang eyes like this boy. The problem was that no matter how he looked, he couldn't see anything unusual about this boy. His father was a carpenter in the town. This kind of craftsman would have a good reputation in the area. But because he was too dull, he only married a wife at the age of 30, married this little girl. For years ago, he had an only son. It was this boy. Now the boy's name was on the thin book. It was at the top. This meant that this boy was a very important person in Egret, and needed a great demon like him to take it. But since he couldn't think of a reason, he took it. But oh, actually he could use it. The saying that children tend to see unclean things has a widespread basis in this day and age. The woman took the child home and told her husband what had happened. Both of them loved their son dearly, so they didn't think it was a small matter. Because someone had died in the town before, everyone was already panicking. Now that her own son said that he saw an older brother on the tree, just thinking about it sent chills down her spine. Therefore, they decided that this month, the men should work a little harder, carry an extra bucket, and go to the temple to pay their respects. They were supposed to go to the Sanhika Dragon King temple to pray, but now the incense there was not that good. The temple attendant Taoist Kuan-Yangzi was already dead. He had always boasted that his Taoist magic was unparalleled. How could anyone believe that there was a real god in the temple? After much discussion, they finally remembered that there was a small temple on Nanshan Hill. It should be dedicated to a mountain god. However, it would take a day to go to Nanshan Hill and back. It was too far, so he planned to go there next month when he was free. But at night, something happened again. The carpenter went to bed early that night. He was just waiting for his wife to coax the child to sleep, so that he could crawl into bed. The woman knew her husband's intention, and felt her body heat up. She patiently watched as the child gradually closed his eyes. She gently tucked him in, took off her clothes and crawled under the carpenter. But just as she lifted a corner of the quilt, suddenly, they heard the child's bell-like laughter. The crisp, light laughter echoed in the dark room. At this moment, the sky was dark, and the courtyard outside the house was quiet. The carpenter and the woman were instantly rooted to the spot. After a breath of time, they stared at the child with widened eyes. They saw him lying on the small wooden bed, waving his hands and grabbing at the air. He looked very happy. After laughing for a while, he stretched out his hands. It was as if something or someone was making him laugh, and wanted to carry him away. The carpenter and the woman immediately had goosebumps. They then saw the oil lamp on the table suddenly flicker, as if a gust of chilly wind was blowing past. Fear finally erupted. The carpenter snatched up his clothes and ran out of the house, while the woman scrambled to get hold of the child and rushed after him. The two stood in the courtyard shivering. They put on their clothes and didn't dare to go back to the house. Outside the courtyard, the sky was full of stars and the moon was bright. Teeth chattering, they discussed for a quarter of an hour. That very night, they went to the house next door to borrow 4 pancakes, a dozen eggs, a bamboo basket, and 2 torches. They immediately set off for the mountain god temple on Nanshan Hill. Li Yunxin sat on the roof of his house, watching the light slowly leaving Egret Island, slowly passing through the bamboo forest, and slowly disappearing into the forest. He sighed with a smile. Alas, mother's love. The couple hurried all night, and finally arrived at the foot of Nanshan Hill. This Nanshan Hill was also near Dongting Lake. However, the lake shore was relatively steep, and it didn't have the white beach near Egret Island. Although the scenery was good, it was not famous. They were scared and tired all night, hungry and cold. At this time, they saw a broken post pavilion on the side of the mountain. Although it was overgrown with weeds, it was still clean. Squinting and looking carefully, they could see a corner of the eaves of the mountain god temple halfway up the mountain. So the couple was a little relieved. They had arrived at the foot of the mountain, and the sky was clear. There shouldn't be any ghosts. Thinking that they still had to climb the mountain, the child was tired and crying in the basket. So the couple decided to go to the post pavilion to rest and eat something. The sun rose, and the couple felt warm. The woman coaxed the child for a while, and the child stopped crying. The carpenter went to the lake and got some water to drink. He also got some for his wife. After eating and drinking, she was no longer hungry, so she leaned on the carpenter's shoulder and wanted to sleep for a while. However, as soon as she rested, the tiredness came like a tide. The woman hugged the child's arm tightly and then slowly fell asleep with her husband. After a few seconds, there was a low snore, and the child jumped out of the woman's arms. He staggered and almost fell. After muttering a few words in a low voice, he began to jog towards the west. There was an unknown small river in the west, which was going to flow into Dongting Lake. The river was very shallow, and colorful pebbles and green water plants could be seen in the river. Someone placed a few big stones at the shallowest part of the river for pedestrians to step on. The two ends were occasionally stepped on by people. So the child walked to the side of the road and stopped. Then he climbed on a blue stone with his hands and feet, and sat down. It seemed that he felt it was not appropriate, so he adjusted his posture several times, and finally felt satisfied. The sun gradually rose, and the shadow of the bamboo beside the blue stone moved slowly and became shorter. The 4-year-old boy began to wait patiently. Chapter 134. Lu Laodao usually went down the mountain to carry water at noon. There used to be a spring behind the mountain god temple, but it gradually dried up a few years ago. Sherquizi would carry 2 buckets of water from the foot of the mountain to the top every few days. But Lu Laodao had been here for a few days, so he needed more water. So now he went down the mountain to carry water every day. He had almost changed his appearance. He used to have a loose bun and a long beard. But since he came to Sherquizi's place for almost 10 days, he cut off his beard. Of course, it was not shaved, but cut into a short beard. In addition, he had been doing almost nothing these past few days, and only focused on cultivating the water cloud force that Li Yin Xian had taught him. As a result, he looked slightly younger. So the current Lu Laodao, probably people who were not familiar with him would not recognize him. 3 days ago, Sherquizi came back from the city of Wei and told him that Magistrate Zhao and the 3 prefectural magistrates had left the city of Wei, and now it was managed by an official from a neighboring prefecture. That official did not want to cause too much trouble in the city of Wei. So many cases were casually dismissed. No one even investigated the cause of Constable Xing's death. This news made the depressed Lu Laodao feel a little better, but he still did not like to talk. He carried 2 heavy wooden buckets down the mountain road, but he did not feel tired. He just thought of what happened in the city of Wei for more than a month, and felt it was like a dream. Cultivators, demons came and went in that 1 month. Now he looked at the mountain scenery, the branches, the path, the sunlight, the cobwebs among the grass, the clothes that had just been washed and still smelled of acacia. It felt even more like a 1,000-year dream. He felt that he was a mortal after all, accidentally involved in the battle of so many immortals. But that wasn't a world that belonged to him. Even someone as talented as Brother Xian had been killed. That world was probably far away from him. When he woke up from the dream, it would be another few years, or 10 years of ordinary life. He drank some coarse tea, knocked off the dried soil on the soles of his shoes, looked up at the sky. This life passed. Lu Laodao could not help but sigh. Although he knew that this was the life that an ordinary person like him should live, he always felt very empty in his heart. After all, he had seen that world. Before he knew it, he had reached the stone monument at the foot of the mountain. Out of habit, he looked at the intersection. He discovered that a couple seemed to be sleeping in a distant post house, and there seemed to be nothing out of the ordinary. So he went west. There was a small river in the west. The water was clear and shallow. There was a hint of sweetness in it. Boiled tea was the most fragrant. After taking a few steps, he suddenly heard a faint singing sound. It seemed to be the singing of a child. Lu Laodao cultivated the water cloud force, so his eyes and ears were already clearer than ordinary people. The child who was singing seemed to be not far from him, so he could hear it even more clearly. The child repeated the 4 lines of the song. The old soul on the 3-life stone. Let's not talk about admiring the moon and singing the wind. I am ashamed to meet an old friend from afar. Although this body is of the opposite sex, it will exist forever. These 4 sentences were like a giant hammer that pounded on his heart. Lu Laodao stood there blankly for a while. The wooden bucket in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Then he strode past a clump of trees in front of him, and finally saw the scene in front of him. Beside the small river, a child was sitting on a large green rock, in the shade of the bamboo. He was waving a green bamboo branch in his hand and singing. Lu Laodao stared at him, and slowly walked in front of him. When the child saw him coming, he stopped singing, and threw down the bamboo branch in his hand. Standing up on the green rock, he smiled and bowed to Lu Laodao, saying, "Old friend, why are you so late?" Lu Laodao was momentarily speechless. He could only say with a trembling voice, You are." The child continued, "In my previous life, I was indebted to an old friend's care, and I am deeply grateful. Because I was worried about your safety, I specially asked the King of Hell for mercy, and threw myself into the body of this dying child to see you. In my previous life, I did too many bad things. After death, I will have to suffer in the netherworld. Therefore, I wanted to ask an old friend for a favor." When Lu Laodao heard this, tears flowed down his old face. He wanted to go forward and touch and hug the child, but he still felt that it was inappropriate. He could only nod his head repeatedly. "Brother Exane, speak." The child continued, "The Wei River Dragon King that I killed was the 9th son of the divine dragon, Chiwen, which was a violation of the laws of heaven. Therefore, as long as the resentment of the Dragon King does not dissipate, I will have to suffer. If an old friend can make people worship the Dragon King in this world of the living, he will receive incense in the netherworld, and will no longer blame me. I have calculated that an old friend will have a chance in the future. If that chance can gather some people and believers, I will be able to be free sooner. If one day, an old friend wants to establish a cult and accept disciples, since it is worshipping the divine dragon, let's call it the dragon cult." Lu Laodao choked with sobs and said repeatedly, Good. When the child finished speaking, he stood on the green stone and bowed to Lu Laodao, and suddenly fainted. But before Lu Laodao could help him up, he woke up on his own. When he saw that it was a stranger in front of him, and that the stone was cold, he immediately cried and turned over, almost falling from the stone. Fortunately, Lu Laodao caught him. When he carried the child kicked, hit and cried nonstop. The old man thought of the child just now, and then thought of his son and daughter who died young, and couldn't help but feel sad. When he woke up and thought for a while, he guessed that the child should be the couple's child, so he carried him over. When the couple was woken up, they panicked when they saw Lu Laodao and the child. But Lu Laodao looked good, and he was wearing a Taoist robe, so the couple asked him if he was a temple attendant of the mountain god temple, and told him about the recent events. Lu Laodao had experienced it when he was poor. After listening to the reason, he remembered that Brother Exayan said that he was reincarnated into the body of this dying child. He thought that the child's life was about to end, and there was no need to spend money to worship the god. It was better to leave some money, or arrange a funeral, or give birth in the future. But the carpenter had a child at an old age, and the woman loved her son, so how could she listen to such words? She scolded the Taoist priest for speaking unlucky words, and cursing her fat and lively child to die. She was so angry that she didn't even worship at the temple, and turned around to leave. Lu Laodao stood beside the post house, and watched as they carried the child away, and tears flowed down his face. Li Yunxin stood beside him, looked at him for a while, sighed, and also left. It wasn't that he didn't want to see Laodao, but it was for his own good. What he needed to do now was risky. This was the only way to minimize the risk. It wasn't that he didn't want him to spend the rest of his life with Shirkuizi on Nanshan Hill. But these days, he often came to investigate, and realized that it didn't seem to be the life Laodao wanted. Since that was the case, he would fulfill his wish. What's the fun in living? By the time the husband and wife returned to Egret Island, it was already time for lunch. The neighbors on the street saw them, and they were all curious about what was going on. The carpenter's family of 3 borrowed things in the middle of the night, and rushed to the mountain god temple. This news had already spread during the day, and now it had become another strange story in town. The couple was angry and afraid, but since everyone already knew, they weren't afraid to say it. They told the story of meeting a Taoist priest at the foot of Nanshan Hill, and embellished the story to ease their anger, and also to share some of their fear. The carpenter was one of the more popular people in the town. Seeing that the carpenter's family was in trouble, and they were so relaxed, more and more people started to gather. Li Yunxin stood beside the carpenter's family of 3, and listened to them. He knew the time had come. So he suddenly pounced and possessed the child's body. Chapter 135. The three of them were sitting outside a tea house on the long street of the town talking. The owner of the tea house had ordered tables and chairs from the carpenter, so they had a good relationship. So he served tea to the two, and told them to have a good rest. He picked up the child and teased him, saying that if he didn't dare to go home tonight, he could stay at his house and go to the temple of the Dragon King tomorrow. Or he heard that there was a Taoist priest on Mount June. Maybe he could ask for a favor. The onlookers saw that the story was almost finished, so they lost interest and planned to leave. Because the sun had almost set behind the mountains, the street was covered in shadows. The afterglow of the setting sun gilded the people dark red, and there was a slight breeze. At this time, the child suddenly stuttered in the arms of the tea house owner. "My time has come." Although it was a child's voice, the tone was calm and steady, as if it came from the mouth of an adult. At that time, the owner was turning to greet the people who were about to leave. Hearing the voice, he turned to look. He found that his little nephew was calm and indifferent, and that expression. He suddenly remembered what the carpenter couple had just said. Fear gushed out from the bottom of his heart like a tide. His arm trembled, and the child slipped from his arms. The carpenter couple didn't hear what the child had just said. Seeing her son fall on the ground, the woman hurried to help him. However, she saw the child take 2 steps back, avoiding her hand. Such a pink child wearing a doo-doo, after stepping back 2 steps, unexpectedly stood still with a solemn face. He bowed to the carpenter couple and said calmly, "My time has come." The onlookers finally saw everything clearly. It was as if a cold current swept through the crowd. The noisy crowd quietened down in an instant. A chill slowly crept up their spines. They all stared at the child with round eyes. They saw him say to the carpenter and the woman, who were also stunned, "I was the dragon prince of the vast sea, and my real body was Chiwen. I sneaked out of the dragon palace for fun, and reincarnated into your family. I was supposed to die when you gave birth, but my father loved that the vast sea was boring, so he allowed me to play in the human world for 4 years. The Chiwen that appeared in Wei City a few days ago was my real body. Today the time had come. Yesterday, it was my elder brother who came to pick me up. But seeing that you all love me, he delayed it for another day so that I could say goodbye to you all." At this point, the chill on the people's spines slowly receded. Although he was still so shocked that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly, he knew that it was Dragon Prince, and not Evil Ghost, after all, so he wasn't as afraid in his heart. But someone was already trembling with excitement, coming into contact with a god, at such a close distance. The carpenter couple was also dumbfounded. The woman wanted to cry but didn't dare to. She wanted to hug him, but didn't dare to hug him. She could only cover her mouth as tears flowed through the gaps between her fingers. The child continued, "But in order to repay your kindness in raising me for 4 years, I have buried a golden statue under the loquat tree in your family's courtyard. In the future, when you worship this statue, I will receive incense. I have the body of a divine dragon, and my magic power is boundless. You can also worship me as the cult leader, and establish a dragon cult. When you worship me, you can chant the cult leader of the dragon cult will enjoy immortal blessings forever, and live as long as the heavens to show your sincerity. In a few days, there may be black dragon envoys, white dragon envoys, blue dragon envoys, and red dragon envoys appearing in this world. You must not neglect them." After saying this, he shouted, all right, I'm going." Then he fell to the ground, and didn't move anymore. When the woman saw this, she immediately cried and rushed forward. When she checked his breath, she found that the child was really dead. At this time, her husband dared to walk forward and hug the child. It seemed that he couldn't cry even if he wanted to. He had something else on his mind, and kept looking in the direction of his family. And the people were in an uproar, like a swarm of flies buzzing in discussion. Those who believed in it pretended to worship the child's corpse. Some were skeptical, and shouted to go to the carpenter's courtyard to dig it up. Some hurried to protect the child and walk away, saying that it was a newly dead child with a strong murderous aura. At this time, Li Yunxin used the iron chain to lock the child's small soul, but he couldn't see what was wrong with the soul. Many demons and yin spirits can temporarily pull a person's soul out of their body, but unless it's a powerful demon, it's very difficult to really take a person's soul away. When it's 10 feet away from the person, the soul will only linger around the body. Because of this, when demons harm people, they can only make the soul leave the body. If they find a Taoist priest with some cultivation, it's very easy to pull the soul back. And the iron chain in Li Yunxin's hand was given to him by Bai Yanjun. Once you put it on a person's body, you can pull the soul out. As long as the iron chain is here, the soul will obediently follow it. Right now, he used the iron chain to lock the child's soul and left the crowd. He followed the instructions in the booklet. First, see if there are any locust trees nearby. None. Then he walked a little further and found a place where the yin energy converged and led the child's soul to that place. Then he shouted, "It's time, why don't you go?" The soul shuddered and disappeared into the yin qi. In fact, Li Yunxin really wanted to go in and take a look, to see what the underworld looked like. But he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to return, so he had to give up. When he returned to the street, the crowd was no longer there. They all went to the carpenter's house. At this time, the sky was already dark. People lit torches or lamps and gathered under the tree to watch the carpenter dig out the golden statue. Originally, the carpenter's death was a sad thing for everyone. But now that they knew it was Qi Wen and the Dragon Prince, they felt that it was a miraculous happy event. The carpenter himself didn't seem to be sad anymore. Instead, he was happy that there might be a golden statue. Happy. Even if it was a small statue the size of a fist, even if it was hollow, it was worth a lifetime of hard work for him. In the noisy and strange happy atmosphere, only the woman was holding her child's cold body, sitting in the darkness under the eaves of her house, and wiping her tears. She cried like this for a while. Suddenly, she found that people suddenly quieted down. After 2 breaths, exclamations broke out simultaneously. Then, almost everyone in the courtyard knelt down. Her husband, whose hair had already turned white, stood under the loquat tree in the courtyard, in the dim light of the torches. Hugging a golden statue, he smiled joyfully. But the shadow on his face made the smile look a little ferocious. The woman stared at her husband for a while, then suddenly lowered her head and cried even more sadly. People were shouting words like Dragon King, Dragon Cult Leader, Qi Wen Dragon Son, and so on. But these voices were vague in the woman's ears, and the golden statue and the firelight were also vague in her eyes. There was only that little corpse in her world, only that one thing was clear and real. Chapter 136. It has been more than 10 days, and the wilderness mountain is green again. After a rain, the ashes of the grass and trees become the best fertilizer. So the shoots come out of the wet soil, see the sunshine, and grow wildly when the wind blows. When the middle-aged man in a gray robe stands on the land where Lu Ling fell, the grass has reached his feet. The middle-aged man is just a middle-aged man with a plain face. But his beard is black, smooth and shiny, as if he has been carefully groomed. The gray robe is also a plain gray robe, but there is no wrinkle except for the smooth wrinkles caused by the drooping clothes. There is no trace of stitching or stitching. He stands here and looks at the city of Wei to the southwest. It is a sunny day today, and the city of Wei can be seen clearly under the blue sky. Looking into the distance, he sees a large piece of lush wilderness forest, and the Wei River reflecting the sunlight like a jade belt. And he can't see the end of the Dongting here. The middle-aged man looks at it for a while and sighs in a low voice. This old thing. Then he strolled forward, and a gray cloud appeared under his feet. After 3 steps, he is already on the gray cloud. Then his robe flutters, and he rides the cloud with the wind, straight to the city of Wei. Yun Zi, the president of the Institute of Law of the Lengye Cave of Daotong, an enlightened immortal, arrives at the city of Wei on this day. Cultivator Yunzi is already 132 years old. The realm of enlightened immortal is not the highest among the realms. Above it are advanced immortal and perfect harmony immortal. But the reason why he comes to the city of Wei instead of others is that he has been living in the mortal world for 46 years before he entered the Tao. He started to cultivate at the age of 46. Before that, he was a middle-level official. Although the heavenly heart Tao art had washed away his worldly aura, he was still the most knowledgeable person in the Langya Grotto heaven, compared to the others who had started cultivating at a young age, or were born in the Grotto heaven. The Langya Grotto heaven, which was ranked 9th among the 18 grotto heavens of Daotong, had no lack of treasures. Many cultivators relied on famous scrolls, rare scrolls, or even treasured scrolls to pass the heavenly tribulation. The time they saved could be used to cultivate their Tao techniques. But this time Ling Kongzi, who was the most talented and favored one in the cave, died in the city of Wei. Therefore, he had to come forward and take care of it in the mortal world. After all, this Yunzi was the most perceptive. At least, that was what the cultivators of Langya Grotto heaven thought. Yunzi, who stepped into the city of Wei, hid his tracks. No one noticed this immortal descending from the sky. He had already used his supernatural power to send a message in advance. Therefore, when he arrived at the place where the Shangqing pill cauldron was stationed, the servant had already prepared a place for him to rest. Yunzi didn't seem to care about those external matters. He only called one person over and immediately asked about serious matters. This person was the closest servant of Tsong Yunzi in the city of Wei. Her name was Chiu. His real name was Chiu Yiqi, and he was a member of a good family in the city. Because he wanted to learn Tao techniques, he used money to send to the Shangqing pill cauldron sex station. Who knew that before he could learn much, he was taken in as a catamite by Tsong Yunzi because of his good looks. This Chiu was sly and knew when to advance and when to retreat. In 3 to 4 years, he had already become the closest person to Tsong Yunzi. When Tsong Yunzi grew older, he wasn't good at sexual matters. Thus, he really treated him like his own nephew and taught him some profound Tao techniques. Now Chiu had already become a teenager of 18 or 19 years old. His Taoist name was Ming Chiu. When Tsong Yunzi wasn't around, he was already someone who had a say in this station. When Yunzi summoned him, Chiu told him everything that happened these few days, including how he found Tsong Yunzi's corpse in the forest beside the Wei River. Although he was sad when he spoke, he didn't lose his composure. His speech was also orderly. Therefore Yunzi didn't hate him. Therefore, when Chiu finished speaking, Yunzi didn't drive him away. He just stood aside obediently. The cultivator in the realm of truth pondered for a while, and shook his head slightly. This must be done by that old thing. That old thing has been in Dongting for 2,000 years. There must be some unclear relationship between that old thing and that dragon son. I don't believe that they are incompatible like fire and water. As soon as Dragon Sun died, Linger's Dharma body also disappeared. Tsong Yunzi was killed again. The head of a Taoist in the realm of emptiness was smashed. It must be done by a demon. Now the deity position in the temple near the city of Wei is empty. That old thing in Dongting doesn't occupy it. She must be waiting for something. He paused for a moment. Waiting for that Bai Yunxin. That old thing may think that Bai Yunxin killed Dragon Sun. Well, Ling is arrogant, but she is not reckless. After such a catastrophe, there must be a powerful force beyond her calculation making trouble. It must be that Bai Yunxin, the daughter of the Rock King. Speaking of this, the cultivator paused for a long time, and then asked, "Is there anything else these days?" Even though Chiu was smart, she didn't know how to answer such a general question from the immortal. But after thinking for a while, she still observed his face while picking up some recent news in the city of Wei. After saying a few things, she found that the immortal had no sadness or joy on his face. She became bolder and talked for 2 hours. When he really had nothing to say, Yunzi, who had been sitting and even breathing, finally opened his eyes. "Worship the dragon god." He looked out of the window. "And the golden statue?" "Yes, I've seen it too," Chiu said. "It said that there was a baby in the Egret continent who called himself the Dragon Prince of the Vast Sea. He said that his real body was Chiwen. He came to the mortal world to play for 4 years, and it was time to return. So he told his parents about his real body. And the carpenter really dug out a golden statue in the yard. When I was looking for my master, I went there to take a look. I said that a Lao Dao had predicted that the child would die. So a group of people went to him and asked how to worship the golden statue. That Lao Dao was also a money grubber. So he collected some real money and worshipped the golden statue in the mountain god temple of the southern mountain, and named himself the temple attendant of the dragon god temple. But that thing, Chior frowned. Immortal, I've learned some techniques. I can also distinguish the Reiki on the golden statue. There is Reiki, but it's not the Reiki of the dragon sun. Yunzi said indifferently. Chior's face showed just the right amount of surprise. How did Sendo know? Yunzi shook his head slightly, and finally showed a slight smile. There is no vast sea. There is no dragon prince. I think that it must be a clever demon that possessed the child's body, and used his mouth to say such nonsense to fool the ignorant mortals. That demon doesn't know much, and mortals have no way of knowing. Thus, the golden statue definitely has the demon's Reiki. Chior pretended to be enlightened. Sendo is wise. Then the so-called dragon cult is just a bunch of useless people. Yunzi shook his head. No. There is only one thing. The dragon son does have a chi kiss. It is the Wei River Dragon King, the dragon son that was killed. The Wei River Dragon King's true body is a chi kiss. Even your master doesn't know about this. So how did the demon know? If you want to say that it was a coincidence, the dragon son has 9 sons. So how did he fall for the Wei River Dragon King? At this moment, Chior really didn't understand. She could only stand there and listen quietly to what Sendo was saying. Yunzi thought about it for a while and smiled. This old thing. This monster that gathered the divine dragon cult not only knows about Chi's kiss, but also absorbs the power of faith from the Joss flames beside that old thing. A demon that can do this can't be an idiot. Since he isn't dumb, then why did he make up such an obvious lie? What vast ocean dragon prince, why? It means that someone instructed him to do so. He purposely said that, but he also mentioned the chi kiss. What was real and what was fake to make people curious? Curiosity leads to investigation and contact, to see what the dragon son's chi kiss is like. Yunzi heaved a sigh. This old thing has a plan. He instructed people to do such a farce. But, these are all common tricks in the mortal world. How can they hide from me? He set up such a trap to lure Bai Yunxin here. So what if Bai Yunxin is here? He still wants to lure people from Daotong into the trap. Chior was just listening at first. But now she really listened to it. For a moment, she forgot to be respectful, and actually interrupted. So someone instructed a demon to make up such an obvious lie to attract attention? But what about Sendo who lured people from Daotong into the trap? Yunzi wasn't angry. He just smiled again. Linger killed Dragon Son. So that old thing naturally wants to take revenge. But that old thing definitely doesn't want to do it himself. He only wants to see people fight until both sides are injured. Then he can take advantage of it. I heard that Dragon Son died that night, and then Ling, and Bai Yunxin fought. I don't know much about the inside story. But if I want to take revenge, I don't want to know everything. It's definitely not wrong to kill both of them. This is how demons do things. Linger disappeared from here. It must be that old thing's doing. With this, he lured me into this mess to help him fight with Bai Yunxin. This old thing is good at scheming. I'm not a fool. I'm not anxious, so I won't fall into his trap. Let's see how his dragon cult gets stronger and stronger. Let's see how it ends when he finally lured Bai Yunxin here. Chior seriously thought for a long time, and felt that there was a loophole in Sendo's deduction. So she asked Sendo, how can that person be so sure that Sendo will definitely participate in it? Fairies' remains are important, but after all, it's just. Yunzi glanced at him. Remains? Who said that Ling, is dead? She carries the soul calming bell that the master of calligrapher gave her. Even if Black Bai Yanjun came personally and wanted to steal her soul from the bell, he would have to ask the master of calligrapher for permission. Chior was stunned when she heard this. Sendo actually asked him questions for so long, and even told him such a secret. But she was only stunned for a short while, and then she understood Sendo's intention. She immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times, and said with a trembling voice, "In the name of Sendo." Sendo told me so much, it must be intentional. But she heard Yunzi talking to himself, and interrupted her. Look at the questions I asked just now. Is it still useful? Although it's a little dirty, it's not bad to have a smart person to temporarily stay. After all, she has some foundation, and she's not a person from Daotong. Xiaoer was stunned, and she raised her head to look at Yunzi. She found that Sendo was looking at the place where she just stood, talking to the air. Before she could figure out what he meant, she saw Yunzi nod and say, "Sorry for troubling you." Then she waved her hand gently. A breeze caused by the sleeve blew, and Xiaoer's soul left her body. Yunzi flicked his fingernails as if he was disgusted with the dirt, and his soul vanished. But in the next moment, Xiaoer's body quickly stood up again. Everything that had happened in that split second was as if he himself was just slightly stunned and swayed a little. The newly born Xiao stretched her body and walked a few steps in the room. Then she said naturally, "It's a pity that all the people of the Ling Su sword sect in the city of Wei are dead. After this, I still have a good debt to settle with the Ling Su sword sect. I fought with the souls of Li Chunfeng and his wife, and both of us were injured. I was killed by 2 Emptiness Realm swordsmen. 2 useless people. Li Chunfeng and his wife's only son escaped. Now that I think about it, it's really. Don't be angry." Yu Yunzi shook his head. "It's already a great achievement for you to be able to find them and injure their divine soul true bodies. Think about it. You fought with Li Chunfeng's incarnation from 1,000 li away, and you were seriously injured. When you ran into those 2 swordsmen of the High Void Sword sect, you lied to them and told them that the 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers painting was there. You lured them into killing you, took away your talismans, and sealed Li Chunfeng's only son's ocean of qi and mountain of snow for you. The whole plan was flawless. Your talisman was made by a Taoist of the culmination realm. No one in the secular world can undo the seal on his ocean of qi. So what if you let him escape temporarily? You will find him one day. There are traces of that child in Clear River and Wild Plain Forest. I know his name is Li Yunxin, and he is very handsome. Wasn't he the young man in the temple who said that Ling, and Dragon's son were fighting? Since he is dead, the jade slip of enlightenment is either in the hands of that old thing or by Yunxin. Or maybe it is in Linger's hands. Since you and I are here, what else can't be solved? With our intelligence, it is naturally easy to play with these demons in the palm of our hands. Is there anyone in the Wei River who is better at scheming than us?" Yunzi tried to persuade her for a long time, as if he was coaxing a willful child. The cold demeanor of an enlightened Taoist master was nowhere to be seen. After this persuasion, this Xiaoer snorted and walked to the table and sat down. But after sitting for a while, she suddenly slammed the table and screamed, "But we still can't spare the Ling Su sword sect." Yunzi sighed. Okay. After dealing with this matter, we will go to the Ling Su sword sect, okay? Xiaoer snorted again. But she only sat for a while, and then stood up. "I still don't feel happy. I am going to get some fresh air." "Don't follow me." Yunzi shook his head. "I won't follow you. But don't get within 3 feet of the Dongting River. As for the others, no one in the Wei River can hurt you." After saying this, Xiaoer slammed the door and went straight into the courtyard. Chapter 137. Think about it, when you are hungry but not thirsty. First, there is a piece of steaming, crispy and fragrant beef wrapped in delicious sauce. He picks it up with chopsticks and puts it into his mouth slowly. Then a mouthful of steaming white rice with distinct grains, sweet, soft and elastic, goes into his mouth. The aroma of beef is steamed by the rice and mixed together, permeating every grain of rice. As soon as he bites, the delicious juice bursts out in his mouth because of the smooth and tender taste. Then he is filled with joy and happiness. Li Yunxin once thought he would never experience this kind of happiness again, because this body does not feel hungry. It is difficult to taste the deeper taste of food when eating without hunger. So he also understands why the Lord Dongting pays so much attention to satisfying the desire of food. But now this feeling appeared again. People are worshipping the golden statue of Dragon Prince kissed by the vast sea. The cat demon attached to it shared this cup of soup with Li Yunxin. He was indeed a cheese kiss. Mortals don't know whether this Qi-Wen is Qi-Wen or not, but there is only one Qi-Wen god in the world. Who cares if he is Vast Sea Dragon Prince or Wei River Dragon King? Powerful people near Wei River all think that Qi-Wen is dead. Only Li Yunxin sits in a wooden pavilion at the head of Egret Island, leaning against a wooden pillar of primary color, while enjoying the satisfaction and happiness of the power of incense, and wish flowing into his body like a trickle. He throws salted fish into the water. It is noon and the sun is burning. There are few people near the Dragon King temple. Cicadas are screaming in the trees, and dragonflies are standing on the tips of the withered grass. It is just summer, but the air on the ground has been a little twisted by the sun. There is a bamboo basket beside Li Yunxin with a dozen salted fish in it. The fishy smell attracts a few flies buzzing around him, but they never dare to get close because of their instinctive fear. Beneath his feet was the shallow waters of Dongting. At this moment, he was holding salted fish's tail in his hand. When he loosened his grip, he fell into the water with a splash. Hence he muttered, "A salted fish opens its mouth and falls into the water with a plop." He picked up another one and threw it into the water, chanting, "Two salted fishes, two mouths open, plop 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 into the water." After a while, he looked at the surface of the water, but there was still no movement. So he picked up the silver wine jug on the railing and poured a thin line into his mouth. Squinting at the sparkling lake, he threw another salted fish into the water. 3 salted fish with 3 mouths open, plop 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 into the water. Just like that, he slowly threw the dozen or so salted fish into the lake. He kicked over the bamboo basket and threw away the wine pot. Leaning against the pillar, he slowly sat on the floor of the pavilion and closed his eyes. Li Yunxin rested for a quarter of an hour amidst the chirping of the cicadas and the cool breeze. Then he opened his eyes. She saw a pair of red shoes embroidered with golden threads and a thin red dress on the floor in front of her. So he tilted his head, half closed his eyes, raised a hand and waved it casually as a greeting. "Oh, Miss Li, how have you been after marriage?" The lady in the red dress did not speak. She only clasped her hands behind her back and silently walked a few steps in front of him. Then she looked at the lake outside the pavilion and asked, "For no reason, why did you throw that thing at my house?" Li Yunxin squinted his eyes and raised his head to look at her. He smiled. "That night when I saw Miss, I fell in love with her at first sight. I couldn't forget her. Today, I was so depressed that I came to get drunk. I also heard rumors about Miss, so I bought a basket of salted fish and threw it into the lake, just to see Miss's face again. I even wrote a poem for Miss, 1 salted fish, 1 mouth." The lady in red was already angry. "You actually dare to use this matter to make fun of me? You're just a ghost cultivator, master." But halfway through her words she suddenly stopped. Her thin brows furrowed and her bright eyes turned around. The expression on her face became indifferent again. She only said, "Oh, so that's how it is. Humph, that Du Sheng. When he was alive, he was an interesting scholar who studied hard. But after he became a ghost and wanted him to become a ghost cultivator, he only knew how to say, 'My karma is here, my karma is here.' He's a fool. The moment he saw me, he cried and threw a tantrum, saying that he owed me a great debt of gratitude. How boring. You asked me how my marriage is? Not good at all." When Li Yunxin heard this, his eyes lit up. He slapped the fan in his hand and stood up. "Yes, yes. A mortal's soul will be damaged if it leaves the body for a long time. Once it is damaged, it will become stupid and only have a heart of obsession. After all, that Du Sheng is just a mortal. As for me, I'm—" The lady burst out laughing. "Since you are interested in me, are you willing to follow me to White Forest Red Flower City and be my husband?" Li Yunxin was stunned for a while, as if he couldn't believe that this matter was settled so easily. But after a while he hurriedly stood up and said, I'm willing, I." The lady's pair of bright eyes looked at him up and down for a while, and the smile on her face suddenly disappeared. She took a step back, flew upside down and sat on the railing. Her pair of slender legs swung back and forth in the air, revealing her faintly discernible snow-white ankles under her skirt. "Humph. Do you think I'm stupid?" The lady slightly pouted and glanced at Li Yunxin. "When you saw me that night, you only heard people call me Red Lady. But did they ever mention that my surname is Li? Just now you called me Miss Li. How could you not know that you've already given yourself away?" Hearing her words, Li Yunxin was instantly dumbfounded. She stood rooted to the ground, unable to say a word. Seeing him like this, the lady finally smiled complacently. You're really smart. You know that I'm the daughter of Lord Dongting. And you also know that Taoist Leon Mountjun is my father. I've heard about your matter from my father. She slightly narrowed her eyes. A dangerous smile appeared on her face. You're that dragon son's friend. Since you're that dragon son's friend, do you know how I was beaten back to my original form, how I turned into a red carp, and how I suffered? At this time, Li Yunxin put away the previously feigned look of admiration on his face, and became serious. He slightly frowned and clenched his silver teeth. I know. Red Lady slightly raised her face and glanced at him. Even if you know, you should know how much I hate that dragon son. Although it's because of my father. But you put on this play, Do you think I don't know your intention? You guessed that I and that Du Xing don't get along well, and you felt that I had some affection for you that night. So you planned to use your beauty to seduce me. What love at first sight, what unbearable suffering. Do you think I'm one of those mortal women? You're still far from deceiving me with this trick. Speak properly. Do you really intend to become my husband, and bewitch my father to take revenge for your dragon son friend? Is that right? Li Yunxin was silent for a while and took a deep breath. So what? Red Lady coldly snorted again. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you because I know that you're that dragon son's friend? Li Yunxin was silent again. After a moment of silence, he suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. So what if I die? He stopped smiling and looked at Red Lady with a slightly ferocious face. My friend was killed, and your father, Lord Dongting, was also his friend. But I told him these things, and he wanted to hurt me. It's okay if he wanted to hurt me, these days. But nothing happened. He is the Lord Dongting, a powerful monster for 3,000 years. Dragon Son died beside Dongting, but he was indifferent. Do you know that there is a dragon cult recently? Worshipping Dragon Son, worshipping Cheese Kiss. Is there such a humiliation? Li Yunxin said angrily. I'm just a Yin spirit that is about to take shape. What can I do to that Daotong and the big monster? Do you know what's going on with the dragon cult? If you ask me, isn't it caused by that Daotong and the monster? He used the name of my friend Dragon Son to absorb the power of incense and wish, but he absorbed it from another monster. She even wanted to humiliate him again. Yes, he die back. How can I bear such a great humiliation? Li Yunxin swung his sleeves fiercely. I can't think of anything else. In order to avenge this, I give myself to you. So what? So what if you kill me? This is my last chance. After he finished speaking, he stared straight at Red Lady. Although he looks fierce, he seems to be afraid in his heart. He grasps and puts down the folding fan, and raises his head slightly. Obviously, he is cheering himself up in his heart. Red Lady looks at him calmly for a while. Suddenly, she shakes her head slightly and smiles. She raises her hand to fix her hair, and then squints at the distant Dongting. Then she turns to look at Li Yunxin. Look at you. Am I that fierce? Give yourself to me. What kind of nonsense is that? Do you think my appearance and temperament have wronged you? She purses her lips and smiles, looking at Li Yunxin up and down. I like your temperament. You are an honest and loyal man, but you know how to be flexible. She is silent for a while and sighs slightly. I am also like you. I married Du Xing just to repay his kindness. I am a ghost, so I can only have a ghost marriage with him. I didn't expect that. He has completely changed. Such a turn of events seems to make Li Yunxin stunned again. He looks at Red Lady in a daze. The resolute and sad expression on his face is gone for a moment, and he looks extremely embarrassed. After being stunned for a while, he takes 2 steps back and stutters. Red Lady, you are? I am. Red Lady shakes her head and squints at the Dongting in the distance. Although Du Sheng is not pleasing, he is my wife after all. That night and these days, I have not paid attention to him. I don't think I will in the future. I just let him stay in Red Flower City and support him. But since he is here, and I am not a shameless person, I won't promise you anything else. You should give up on such thoughts. As for the dragon cult, my father doesn't know it. Red Lady looks at Li Yunxin seriously. You don't know the relationship between my father and Dragon Son, so it's not your fault for this misunderstanding. But don't worry, my father will never ignore it. It's not convenient to tell you the key, but you have to wait patiently. My father also suspects that the dragon cult is created by Dao Tong and by Yunxin, but it is also because of this that he has to wait. Let's see how powerful the dragon cult is. If it really creates a big demon, how can Dao Tong sit still? She thinks for a while and sighs. It's also because my father got that. Alas, I think it's also a big trouble. That woman. Li Yunxin immediately says, I heard from the Lord Dongting that he got another concubine. But it's not a concubine. It's a trouble. Now the Taoists in the city of Wei are not willing to leave. After saying this, Red Lady stops talking. She just sits on the fence of the wooden pavilion, holding her chin with one hand and looking at Dongting. No one knows what she is thinking. Her red sleeves slide down, revealing half of her snow-white arm. Li Yunxin doesn't say anything and just stands there. The pavilion quiets down. The cicada, which was scared by them just now, starts to chirp again. An egret schemes over the water, looking for some small fish to eat. A small boat is rowing slowly on the lake. There is only a white line of clouds in the sky. The distant mountains are green and tender. After staying quietly like this for a while, Red Lady lets out a sigh and smiles. This is really good. It's not like the Red Flower City. After saying this, she jumps down from the fence and throws a small bell to Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin catches it and finds that the bell seems to be made of gray iron. It's misty. When he shakes his hand, there is a strange bell sound. Not clear, but a little sharp, like the chirping of a bird. Red Lady points at the bell. That night, you gave me the soul of a Taoist and said it was a gift. I think you must have done something. So you refined the Taoist soul and made it into this bell. Actually, it's interesting that the Taoist soul hasn't dissipated yet and is still conscious. But when you pinch this bell, it's like pinching his ghost. When a ghost is pinched, isn't it very painful? That's why it cries like this when you touch it. It can be used to relieve boredom. She smiles softly as she says this. After that, he rested for a while and suddenly asked, Then, do you really love me? Li Yunxin is startled when he hears this. Then he blinks his eyes. You still no shame. Red Lady smiles, jumps out of the pavilion, and goes straight into the water. I will help you ease the pain of my father. You must remember my kindness. Li Yunxin looks at her disappearing into the distance. After a while he finally lets out a sigh of relief. This little demon dares to tease this king. He blinks his eyes and laughs, feeling a little amused. The Lord Dongting is like a human, but his daughter is even more like a human. If he doesn't have to, he really wants to tease her slowly. It's really very interesting. Such a clever little demon. While laughing, he gently pats his hands with the folding fan and slowly walks along the road. While walking, he thinks of something. Like this, he passes through Egret Town, turns into a wild forest, and walks towards the direction of the city of Wei. Suddenly, he sees a man in colorful clothes running towards him while waving his hands and feet, shouting at him, King, King! Disaster, disaster, disaster! This man pats his arms while running, like a child playing, but the expression on his face is frightened and anxious, although it is a slightly protruding, somewhat strange face. When he runs closer, Li Yunxin frowns and kicks him to the ground, scolding him to his face. Disaster your sister! Only the minions of the villain will shout like this. Do you understand? Chapter 138. In fact, Li Yunxin is quite tolerant to these monsters. He even has a sense of intimacy. When he saw the four monsters listening to Mrs. Sanhua, he felt it was novel and interesting. So he gave them names: Sheriff, Tsiji, Shuck, and Pheasant. The one who comes here today is Pheasant. At that time, he just felt it was interesting. When he took over the bodies and went to see these monsters again, he actually felt intimate. This kind of intimacy has nothing to do with feelings. In Li Yunxin's view, it is just a physiological recognition because of similar identities. However, he knows that physiological feelings usually affect psychology, and a person like him can be so easily influenced by physiology, which means he has a sense of loneliness subconsciously. Because of loneliness, he needs the care and recognition of the same kind. Therefore, after seeing these monsters again, he feels, well, not bad. This is a dangerous tendency. He has a sign of losing control of his emotions, and he doesn't like this kind of sign at all. So he tries a kind of close but distant relationship. But it doesn't seem to be very successful. The pheasant is kicked to the ground by him. He stares with round eyes and still says, my king, it's not good." Li Yunxin sighs and picks him up. He takes a big step and walks a few miles in the jungle in the blink of an eye. Then he throws him to the ground. "I told you to patrol the mountain well, and don't get close to the Dongting within a mile. Do you know how close you were to the Dongting just now? If you dare to mess up my business like this next time, I will stew you into a braised chicken tonight. Tell me what's wrong." Before the decisive battle between him and Dragon Sun, and by Yunxin, he had ordered Mrs. Sanhua and other monsters to leave the city of Wei. Now he has created the dragon cult, and these monsters have been possessed in the portraits worshipped by the people. The dragon prince of the vast sea indeed has a golden statue, but in the eyes of the people, as the dragon prince, he has no one to order around, which makes him lose his prestige. What kind of person was Lu Laodao? At once, he fabricated 4 protectors, and 1 to serve the dragon lady. He also made a nondescript clay statue. The 4 little demons and Xiao Jiesen's soul also had a place to rest. Li Yunxin also orders the 4 monsters to patrol the wilderness forest between Dongting and the city of Wei when they are free. Although the little demons did not know what the king's intentions were, they still tried their best every day to tell him everything they heard, regardless of whether it was important or not. However, it was inevitable that they would stumble when they spoke. Li Yunxin always had to think carefully for a long time before he could understand what these guys wanted to say. Such as now. The pheasant stood up and said in a panic, "The city! Aya! A fiend has come to the city!" Outside the city, there was also a malefic star. Aya. Hearing what he said, Li Yunxin thought for a while. "You mean a malefic star wandered in the city for a while, and then wandered outside the city for a while? Your Majesty, you are so wise." The chicken spirit nodded like pecking rice. "He wanted to kill me when he saw me. Fortunately, I ran away fast. Now he is in the city again, Aya, searching everywhere." "Did he use talismans or swords?" The chicken spirit blinked. Both. He stabbed me with a sword and wrote in his hand. Those who used talismans were from Daotong, and those who used swords were from Kenzo. Those who used both were wild Taoists. But these days, the divine dragon cult in the vicinity of Nanshan Hill was very popular. There were hundreds of foolish men and foolish women who came to the divine dragon cult. Such a strong power of faith made the cultivation of those few little demons increase a little. According to the level of human cultivators, the chicken spirit was now at the peak of the artistic realm. It was the same reason that he used to level up in games. It was always easy to improve at a lower level. A demon at the peak of the artistic realm could transform into a human form, although it was just an illusion. This kind of demon was not a newly formed evil spirit that did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. To the unruly Taoists, it was already a very strong opponent. But how could he chase the chicken spirit to this state? Li Yunxin thought for a while and smiled. "Okay, take me to have a look." He knew someone came to the city of Wei from the sky. He had his own source of information. It was not only limited to these few demons. Logically speaking, there should not be anyone who was not part of his plan. At least one kind of people. So what happened today? should be very interesting. Today's city of Wei was complicated with all kinds of forces. He was walking on a tightrope, even more dangerous than when he was between the ninth young master and Lu Ling. He didn't really like this kind of secretive life, but he didn't like turning into a corpse after doing something spectacular. Well, if he died now, he would not even leave a corpse. Are you kidding? Who did not like the life of being respected by all? But he had to deal with these people and these things. The jade slip of enlightenment was what Daotong and Kinzo wanted. Li Yunxin should be on their list now. If he really showed his face and made a name for himself, endless troubles would come. No matter how strong he was, he could not fight against Daotong and Kinzo alone. But from another point of view, Daotong and Kinzo would not do their best to deal with him alone. That kind of huge thing could affect the whole body. Many things did not depend on whether it could be done, but whether it was worth it. Since his parents were still being hunted after living in seclusion for more than 10 years, it meant that the jade slip of enlightenment was quite worth it, in the eyes of Daotong and Kinzo. But there seemed to be a bottom line. Otherwise, there would not be a few Taoists looking for it in private. If Daotong and Kinzo mobilized all the forces in the world to do this, no matter how powerful his parents were, they would not be able to hide for more than 10 years. So in order to be able to show his face in public in the future, he needed to know how much Daotong and Kinzo were willing to pay for this jade slip of enlightenment. The previous price was a few cultivators of the Lingshu sword sect. It seemed that they did not care. Then it was the genius girl Lu Ling, who was at the peak of the transcendent state in the Langyi cave. But Li Yunxin knew that it was not enough. After plotting against Lu Ling, he had thought that today would be the day when a stronger cultivator would come. It was a pleasant surprise that he got this body of Qi Wen. He had accidentally integrated into another force. Demons. If he used it properly, it would be a big backer. What he needed to do now was to kill this cultivator in the city of Wei. At the moment, Li Yunxin only knew that such a person had come to the city of Wei, but he did not even know whether it was a man or a woman, old or young. He also did not know whether he liked this person's character. But he only knew one thing: this person had to die. Moreover, he had to die a tragic and unexpected death. In the 36 paradises and 72 sects, there were no more than 1,000 cultivators who were above the enlightened master realm and below the perfect harmony master realm. And there were no more than 100 cultivators who were above the profound realm. These people were scattered among the 108 paradises, and they were already treasures. So he planned to kill an enlightened master in the city of Wei to show them. As long as the decision-makers of Daotong and Kinzo were not immature, they would realize how painful it was, how strong he was, and how much they would have to pay if they wanted to continue to take the jade slip of enlightenment. Sure, there would be more profound realm cultivators coming to kill him, but they would also understand that he would not let them die quietly, and the whole world would know about it. Li Yunxin did not know what Daotong and Kinzo were afraid of, but he knew that they did not want to see this matter become a big deal. So they would change to a relatively gentle way. For example, by playing tricks or scheming. At that time, it would mean that he would be recognized as a feudal lord by Daotong and Kinzo. But the premise was that the enlightened master had to die. This would be a huge and meticulous project. Right now, he had only just built the framework and wanted to take a look at the extra screw in the framework. Li Yunxin returned to the Dragon King Temple and the Taoshi Road, which had become a ruin. He did not have many emotions in his heart. The ruins were still ruins, and they would remain ruins for a long time to come. Manpower was very slow, and grass had already sprouted between the broken walls. Some homeless people found houses in the ruins that had not completely collapsed, and did not seem worried that the houses would collapse while they were sleeping. Li Yunxin walked around the ruins for a while, and then called the chicken spirit out of the city to patrol the mountains. Some people were discussing the miraculous things that they had seen in the vicinity today. They said that a handsome young Taoist had caught a ghost from a haunted house in broad daylight. Then, he seemed to have fought with some kind of evil and showed off his power. This was exactly what the chicken spirit had said. According to him, at that time, He had transformed into a red-crowned and colorful rooster, and was walking around the city of Wei, following Li Yunxin's instructions to see if there were any high-level Taoist. He saw a handsome young man waving a willow branch in his hand, walking along the street. He did not seem very happy, and his brows were tightly furrowed, as if everyone on the street owed him money. Then, the young man stopped in front of an inn. This was a fairly prosperous inn, and there were people going in and out of it at that time. He stood in front of the door, and stared at the two doors of the inn for a while, and then walked in without saying a word to the waiter. Coincidentally, a scholar carrying a sword passed by him, and the young man pulled out the sword from the scholar's waist. The sword was also a good sword, and its value was equivalent to a month's expenses for an average family in the city. How could the scholar let go of his sword so easily? He only paused for a while, and without fear of what the young man would do, he pounced on him to take his sword. But the young man did not even look at him, and with one kick, he sent the scholar flying 5 or 6 steps away. The crowd was in an uproar, and thought that he was a martial arts madman, robbing and committing murder in broad daylight on the streets of the old city, and perhaps he would swing his sword at the next moment. Who knew that the young man only took the sword and raised his hand to nail the door of the inn. With a thud, the sword was inserted into the door. The waiter of the inn immediately felt heartache and took a deep breath. This was a century-old inn, and there was a pair of door gods carved on both sides of the door, and they looked very lifelike. It was said that it was made by a master in the early years, and after that master passed away, the value of this pair of door gods increased. Everyone who came and went knew that there was an allusion to this door, and it slowly became a sign of this inn. Now, the young Taoist's sword was inserted into the forehead of the door god, and even if the sword was pulled out, there would be a big hole. So how could the waiter not feel heartache? The waiter saw the innkeeper shouting, and the innkeeper also felt heartache, and took a deep breath, and hurriedly ordered someone to report it to the authorities. But at this time, the young Taoist frowned and shouted in a low voice, "Still not coming out?" This shout was like a spring thunder. The people around him felt their ears go numb from the sound. They didn't understand how this seemingly ordinary young man could make such a sound. And after this shout, the corner of the young man's mouth also bled. It was as if he had also broken his own throat with that shout. But he did not care, and only shouted with a hoarse voice, "Come out!" After this shout, more blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Who had ever seen a guy who only shouted twice and broke his own throat? It was as if this body did not belong to him, and he did not cherish it at all. He only treated it as a piece of clothing, as if he needed to change it at any time. But soon, people's attention was no longer on this young Taoist. A cloud of black gas, from the statue of the door god on the door, slowly gushed out. Then, under the clear sky and bright sky, a strange whirlwind appeared on the ground. Then, that cloud of black gas suddenly shrunk, fell to the ground and grew with the wind. In just a breath's time, it turned into a big ghost with a green face and sharp fangs. This sudden change almost scared the people to death. Some people were speechless, and their faces were full of fear, and they turned around to escape. Some people could not move, and only felt their legs go weak, and their crotches became hot and wet. Some people did not even feel anything, and fainted on the ground with their legs together. But just as these people were about to escape, the young Taoist priest had already pulled out the sword that was stuck in the door with a flip of his hand. He held the sword in his right hand, and with his left hand, he wrote a talisman in the air. This sword suddenly shone with a golden light, as if it had just been taken out of a blacksmith's furnace. Then, the Taoist slashed with the sword. The big ghost with the green face and sharp fangs immediately turned into a puddle of stinking black water, splashing on the ground. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Only now did people realize that they had met an expert. They trembled and retreated a few steps, and then started to shout. They had eyes but did not recognize Mount Tai, and were lucky to have met an expert to slay the demon, and so on. But the young Taoist did not even look at them, and only threw the sword away, and with a hoarse voice he said to himself, "Is this still usable?" It was another tattered body. If I can't find a good and usable one, humph. After saying this, he raised his hands to support his face. He quickly applied force, a cracking sound. The young Taoist broke his own neck. Everyone was stunned. After being stunned for a while, someone walked forward in disbelief and checked his breath. He was really dead. Chapter 139. At this point, even mortals could see what was happening. However, only the chicken spirit could see what was happening next. A ball of green light rose from the Taoist's body and trembled in the air before turning into a green Taoist. However, this Taoist priest was extremely ugly, and his stature was short. His expression was cold and arrogant, as if he was the best in the world. The combination of these two made for a comical scene. Although the chicken spirit could transform into a human and speak human language, it was still not a human. It had sentience, but it was like a child. It thought of its King Li's handsome appearance and momentarily forgot itself. It chuckled at the Taoist soul. So ugly. So ugly. What a short-legged ghost. The Taoist only took one look at him and knew that he was a demon with sentience, but he didn't take it to heart. However, when he heard this, he was enraged. He slapped the back of his head and spat out a small green sword that grew in his hand. Then, he formed a seal with his left hand and slashed at the chicken spirit. The chicken spirit panicked and ran away while the Taoist soul chased after it. Although the chicken spirit's cultivation was shallow, it was still a winged creature and had a body. The Taoist's magic power was considered strong, but he had lost his body and was under the scorching sun. As time went by, the chicken spirit actually chased him all the way out of Wei City. Only then did the Taoist soul want to retreat. The chicken spirit was also scared and said, "Grandpa, don't chase me anymore, don't chase me anymore. You're so handsome. Don't let the wind blow your mouth out of shape." Hearing this, the Taoist stopped and said to the chicken spirit, "The next time I see you, little demon, I'll definitely kill you." Li Yunqin realized that the chicken spirit dared to play tricks on him. It was clearly the chicken spirit who made the mistake first. Although killing someone because of a disagreement wasn't something a Taoist master would do, according to the chicken spirit's description, the Taoist soul wasn't a righteous person. In truth, even the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo were mostly a bunch of mentally ill reservists. He did not take it to heart. He just wanted to see what kind of deity could actually use the techniques of Daotong and Kenzo together. So he walked to the front of the inn. Many people had already gathered here, and they were all discussing the miraculous events of yesterday. However, the puddle of stinky liquid at the place where the big ghost was killed yesterday had not been cleaned up, so the stench in front of the inn was already unbearable. The shopkeeper frowned and said that he had tried many methods, such as splashing water on it, burning it with fire, but the puddle of stinky water refused to disperse. Now that the smell was getting stronger and stronger, the guests in the inn all wanted to return their rooms and money. His heart ached so much that he got 3 blisters in one night. Li Yunqin stood in the crowd and stared at the stinky water. He understood what it was. That young Taoist priest was very strong. This stinky water was actually something similar to his Qi Wen's godhead. For hundreds of years, people believed that there was a door god on this door. Even if they did not believe it, they would think, maybe there really is one in their hearts. Then there would be ghosts possessing the body and receiving the power of wish. Over time, people thought that there was a god on this door. And there was indeed a Yin god on this door. So was this Yin god a real door god, or a fake one? In between these two blurry boundaries, it became something similar to Qi Wen's emptiness. But for thousands of years, no cultivator had any ideas about this thing. First, you had to turn yourself into a soul. But turning into a soul would cause your mind to be damaged, and you would no longer be your former self. And from a ghost to a ghost cultivator, it was a rather long process. And if you were not careful, your soul would be destroyed. And finally, this emptiness was created by people's belief. It was not as stable as Qi Wen's godhead. Once there was no one to believe in it, it would be gone. But today, that young Taoist priest not only killed the big ghost attached to this emptiness, but also directly dismantled that emptiness, which was this stinky water. But even though it was dismantled, Li Yunxin was not out of ideas. He was not sure about other demons, but since he was Qi-Wen, and his origin was somewhat similar to this emptiness, he had a deeper understanding of it. And this deeper understanding was enough for him to comprehend some methods to accomplish this. This was probably the God-given ability of demons and divine beasts. Some things could be understood instinctively, without the need for cultivation. But he was not in a hurry to act, and instead waited in the crowd for a while. More than half of the criminals would not be able to resist returning to the scene after committing the crime, and blend in with the crowd to take a look. Although this wasn't a crime, but according to the chicken spirit's description of that person, he would probably return to take a look. Unfortunately, he miscalculated this time. After waiting for half an hour, there was still no future. However, this miscalculation seemed to have given him a deeper understanding of that person. But in that person's future, there was something else. This street was called Guqing Street, but in fact it used to be called Guqing Street. The name Guqing Street had been used for nearly 200 or 300 years, until the former capital of the city of Wei was conquered. At the end of this street was the abandoned palace of the city of Wei. The abandoned palace, as the name suggested, was an abandoned palace. When the city was conquered, the Qing army massacred the city for 3 days before stopping. Because of the fierce resistance of the former royal family, they suffered many losses. So after killing the emperor in the Golden Palace and stealing the treasures, they burned the palace down. Unfortunately, there was more than one Daqing state in the world. Although the cultivators did not say a word, the royal families of other countries strongly condemned this atrocity. There were always disputes in the world, and there were always wars between countries. In fact, the royal families and aristocratic families of different countries all had marriages with each other, and they were implicated. If a country was destroyed, even the royal family was not spared, then the world would be in chaos. The founder of the Qing kingdom killed General Finwei, who had ordered the massacre. But everyone knew that without the approval of the emperor, no one would have the guts to kill the emperor in the Golden Palace and burn the old capital. General Finwei was also born in a family of officials, so he did not know the taboo. But in the end, he made his stand, and the matter gradually subsided. But because of this, the ruins of the palace had not been touched. It was regarded as the mausoleum of the last emperor of the former dynasty, who was first killed in the palace, and then burned down by the fire. Thus, the Guqing Street leading to the abandoned palace slowly became the Guqing Street. The city of Wei was a big city, and it used to be the capital of the country. So the people of the city of Wei always had a different complex in their hearts. Back then, the city of Wei was the capital of the country for nearly 1,000 years. The capital was only a few hundred years. Li Yunxin could understand this kind of thinking. And now, under the bright sky, on this Guqing Street full of pedestrians, a group of Yin spirits came. The one in front was an armored soldier on horseback. His face was like a melted candle, looking ferocious and terrifying, as if he had been burned alive when he was alive. He held a big spear in his hand. The spearhead was decorated with black tassels. Behind him were 5 soldiers, all wearing armor. But the armor was full of scars, as if he had been killed when he was alive. His face was also ferocious and terrifying, as if he had been burned together with the armored soldier on horseback. Such a group of Yin spirits passed through the crowd on the Guqing Street, openly passing through. Everywhere they passed, the pedestrians shivered, thinking that someone was talking about them behind their back. But no one could see them. Chapter 140. The 6 Yin spirits walked to the front of the inn. The ferocious soldier reined in his horse and stared at the puddle of black water. Then he looked at the puncture marks on the door. After observing for a while, he turned around and sat on his horse before asking Li Yunxian, "Do you know the details of this Yin spirit?" Li Yunxin looked at him with interest. He didn't answer but asked, "I used to live in the city of Wei, but I don't know you. What is this?" The soldier saw Li Yunxin's calm expression and knew he wasn't an ordinary ghost. So his tone softened a little. I'm the 5th Bo Yu, the general of the Golden Guards of Weidu. Today, I came here to investigate after I learned that people of Weidu were killed. Li Yunxin clapped his hands with his folding fan and said, Oh, you're the 5th general. Sorry for not recognizing you. Well, this is what happened. There was a stinky Taoist who came here to poke a door, and a big ghost came out. Then he killed him. After that, he committed suicide. Only a wisp of ghost was left, and no one knows where it went. Now there's a puddle of water in front of the inn. We can't do business anymore. It's really harmful. When Li Yunxin was talking to the general of the Golden Guards of Weidu, he was standing in the crowd. When he finished talking, there was already a small empty space beside him. He was a handsome scholar standing on the street and talking to the air. Previously, a big ghost was found in this door, and before that, there was a battle between demons and cultivators in the city of Wei. Everyone was already in a state of panic. Seeing him like this, they immediately thought, it's a ghost again. But Li Yunxin didn't care at all. He just kept talking. Oh, that's not necessary. It's just that I feel like old friends with you. It must be fate. Although you and I are different, we are both in spirits. I happen to have an idea. At this time, people were guessing whether he was really talking to a ghost or a lunatic. He raised his head slightly and stared at the sky. He listened for a while and shook his head with a smile. Well said. My master is Miss Bai Yunshin. AI, there's no need to mention my real name. My young Miss Bai calls me Li Yunshin. After saying this, he turned around and walked to the door of the inn. The last person who did this made the doorway stink. So this time, the innkeeper mustered up his courage and stood in front of him, trembling with fear. You, what do you want? Li Yunxin frowned and sneered. Mortal, you really don't know death. I want to help you get rid of this disaster, and you dare to make excuses? If you don't move aside, you'll be like this. After saying that, he waved his hand. With a swish, 5 deep claw marks appeared on a red wooden pillar in front of the inn. The wooden pillar was almost cut in half. The innkeeper was stunned for a while. He stared at Li Yunxin's hand and heard a creaking sound coming from the roof. He ran straight into the crowd. Li Yunxin snorted and frowned as he looked at the puddle of stinky water. Then he waved his hand, and the black water, like water stains on a red-hot soldering iron, sizzled and quickly disappeared. After a while, even the stench was gone. After doing all this, he turned around and looked at the soldier on the horse. I've put it in place. General, you can rest assured. The ferocious-looking soldier frowned and stared at Li Yunxin. Your Excellency is so powerful that I've never heard of you. Who are you? Li Yunxin smiled. Go back and ask your king. You'll know. After saying this, he ignored the soldier and turned to look at the people on the street. After looking carefully, he finally found the innkeeper in the crowd. With a wave of his hand, a gust of evil wind wrapped around the innkeeper. Seeing this, the people immediately screamed and ran away, dispersing from the street. But perhaps the supernatural things that happened in the city had gradually made these people used to it. They didn't run far, but hid in the street corners or behind trees, looking out. The innkeeper was trembling like a sieve. He didn't know what to say, so he could only say, Grandpa, spare me. Hero, spare me. King, spare me. Li Yunxin stared at him for a while, smiled evilly, and threw him to the ground. After a few steps, he suddenly turned his head, but his face was full of anger. I helped you get rid of that puddle of stinky water. Why are you afraid of me, huh? Why are you afraid of me? The innkeeper just trembled, holding his head, and didn't say anything. Li Yunxin was angry again. Why don't you speak? Why don't you ask my name, so that you can repay me in the future? Don't you say that people understand etiquette best? If you don't ask me, I'll eat. I'll kill you. Hearing his words, anyone with a clear mind would know that he wasn't a human. The words, I'll eat you, almost slipped out of his mouth. The innkeeper might be scared, and he really asked in a trembling voice, King, what's your name? I'll prepare 3 animals in the future, He wanted to say please come and enjoy, but he was afraid that if he really came he would suffer. Fortunately, Li Yunxin was happy after hearing this. The anger on his face suddenly disappeared, and he smiled. Listen, I'm a follower of the dragon cult. Hehe, dragon cult, do you know? In these days, some people in the city of Wei did know that there was a dragon cult by the Dongting Lake. But most people still didn't know. Hearing his words, the innkeeper was a little confused, and those hiding in the distance didn't even know what the dragon cult was. He got angry again and grabbed the innkeeper. Are you clear about it, Then he stared at those people in the distance. Today, the dragon cult will eliminate the disaster for you. Do you understand? If you say something wrong in the future, I'll... Speaking of this, he suddenly grinned from ear to ear, showing 2 rows of white sharp fangs, and gave a shrill and horrible shout. Eat them all! Even the boldest people didn't dare to look at this scene anymore. He might be a demon, and he really is a demon, or 2 completely different things. A group of people screamed and ran away, and the windows of the houses facing the street were closed with a clatter. The innkeeper had already fainted because of fear. In the blink of an eye, only Li Yunxin was left in the middle of the street. He snorted, walked a few steps into an alley and waved his sleeves. A cloud appeared from the ground and carried him up to the sky. But the problem was it was daytime. A cloud appeared in the city and went straight to the sky. Who couldn't see it? The person in the cloud seemed to be aware of this. He snorted angrily in the air, and suddenly turned back and disappeared in the city of Wei. After a quarter of an hour, a child beggar staggered to the door of the previous inn. The innkeeper had been rescued. He leaned against the pillar of his own house, and kept sighing, saying how could he attract so many demons in a day. Some busybodies asked him what happened at that time. The innkeeper said slowly, while pretending to be pretentious, which made people stare at him. The child beggar listened to him. After hearing that, she suddenly started giggling. Well, what a stupid imposter monster. Chior doesn't fit, and this one doesn't fit either. Hehe, why don't you try the monster? Chapter 141. The beggar said with a smile, and immediately ran towards the direction where the cloud landed. Although the city of Wei couldn't be compared to the cities with millions or tens of millions of people in the future, it was still a famous city praised by people of this era. Although the beggar's legs were as fast as the wind, and it only took him half an hour to get there, he didn't find anything except a group of stunned and panic-stricken people. Everyone said that there was indeed a person who landed here. He was very handsome. How could a demon be so good-looking? He must be an immortal who came to the city of Wei to kill the demon. Some said that the person's dressing and clothes were very familiar. He looked like the Taoist who was walking around in the city of Wei. It was said that the Taoist made a miraculous thing like a river full of sour soup. Hearing this, some people exclaimed, I do remember him. These words spread quickly and were heard by the beggars. Originally, he just wanted to find a stupid demon to change his skin. But after hearing these things, he calmed down and frowned, because he still remembered the reason why he came to the city of Wei with Yunzi. After thinking for a while, the beggar slowly walked away and returned to the residence of the Shangqing Danding sect. Naturally, there were some servants who didn't recognize him and blocked his way. He killed them with a wave of his hand. Yunzi was sitting on the couch and looking at the sky and clouds outside the window. Seeing the beggar came in, he smiled bitterly. You broke your body again. The beggar snorted. Chior is good-looking but useless. He only said a few words and his throat broke. That's really troublesome for me. Originally, I wanted to replace him with a stupid demon, but I found something strange. Yunzi liked the way the other party was acting, calm and rational, instead of flying into a rage. So he praised him carefully. Oh, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. When you said you wanted to go out and play, you really gained a lot. What is going on? The beggar was even happier after being praised. He squinted his eyes and smiled. He jumped onto the table and sat in front of Yunzi. His left hand brushed aside the messy hair hanging in front of his face, and his right hand grabbed the dried fruit on the table and put it into his mouth. As he ate, He talked about what he had seen and heard. Yunzi listened attentively, closed his eyes and thought for a while, before letting out a sigh. He's a tough one to deal with. Who? That stupid demon? That monster is indeed stupid. Yunzi pondered for a while and said that Bai Yunxin would come to Daotong every few decades to make a ruckus, for that feather coat of hers. Therefore he more or less understood her. She had a servant girl by her side. Even now, I don't know what her original identity is, but she has some skills. You said that the monster scared people on the street today, and claimed to be a member of the dragon cult. His style is indeed that of a demon, but this matter doesn't seem to be the intention of a demon. The beggar frowned. What are you thinking about? Do I have to think about so many things again? A sinister plot? You really think too much. Yunzi smiled. Have I ever miscalculated? The beggar twitched his mouth, but he couldn't say anything to refute, so he continued to eat his fruit. This is a plot within a plot. Yunzi let out a long sigh. Those who are simple-minded will only see the first layer. That demon is a member of the dragon cult, so the dragon cult is not a good person, so they should stay far away from them. Those with a deeper mind would have noticed something unusual. For example, although this demon seems to do whatever he wants people to remember that he is a member of the dragon cult. This is too deliberate. So he is doing it on purpose. He deliberately pretends to be fierce, so that people will be afraid of the dragon cult. Then, he is actually an enemy of the so-called dragon cult, and he wants to do something bad to them. The beggar thought for a while, then slapped the table. What you said makes sense. Yunzi twirled his beard, smiled, then shook his head. But this is only the second layer. The flaw of the second layer is too obvious. That person deliberately wants us to think of the second layer. Normally, when people think that there is a deeper meaning to this matter, they will become complacent and self-satisfied, and they won't think about it any further. In fact, that person should really be a member of the dragon cult. The beggar thought for a while, then frowned. Then why did he do all this? Since he is really a member of the dragon cult, why did he pretend to be a member of the dragon cult? Yunzi smiled. That person wants us to think that he is an enemy of the dragon cult. He must know your whereabouts. Then, we will be interested in him, and we will want to see who is on our side. Then, he can take the opportunity to get in touch with us and get some information from us. The reason I put on a show was because I wanted to make it more realistic. When the time comes, as soon as you tell him the second meaning, he will play dumb and say, "Oh, you saw through me." In this way, we can trust him even more. After saying this, Yunzi was silent for a while. You said that the man bared his teeth on the street and said that he wanted to eat people. She can also fly in the sky. Then, she should be Bai Yunxin's servant girl. In the past few days, I've sent people to investigate in the city. That night, more than one person saw a demon that looked like Li Yunxin in the ruins of the Dragon King Temple. With one palm, it smashed Li Yunxin's corpse and disappeared without a trace. From the looks of it, that fiendish demon is this fiendish demon. I previously deduced that the dragon cult is related to Lord Dongting and Bai Yunxin. Now, from the looks of it, the fiendish demon you saw might be Bai Yunxin's servant girl. How can a great demon that can fly in the sky not be famous? There is only one. After hearing him say so much, the beggar felt dizzy. He impatiently threw the dried fruit in his hand on the ground. Tell me more clearly, what happened? Simply put, it is very likely that Bai Yunxin put on a show to mislead us, to make us think that he is an enemy of the dragon cult. Then he took the opportunity to gain our trust, and instigated a fight between us and Lord Dongting. When Yunzi said this, he shook his head slightly. But according to you, you killed the big demon in the sect, and that person came an hour later. Once he came, he put on such a good show. It was completely an impromptu idea. Such quick wit, although not as good as mine, is worthy of the word scheming. If that's the case, let's play with her. She wants to find out the truth about us. You just pretend to be fooled and tell her. That kind of person will definitely show you some flaws on purpose. Then, I can find out their inside story. In the end, haha, I will make them regret that they played such tricks on me. They really don't know the meaning of death. After hearing this, the beggar's eyes brightened. Good, good, good. I'm willing to do this. But if it's done, then the fiendish demon will go with you. The beggar laughed and ran out like a gust of wind. Chapter 142. 2 days later, the beggar finally found the man who called himself Li Yunxin. He was sitting in a branch of the Southwood restaurant in the north of the city, drinking wine. The street was lit up, and there were young men and women. Li Yunxin held a small wine cup and rubbed it against his lips, looking at the pedestrians on the street lazily. Occasionally, he smelled the aroma of snacks on the street, and tossed a few taels of silver to the waiter, asking him to buy them. Soon, the table in front of him was filled with all kinds of food, looking very sumptuous. But he didn't eat, only sipping the wine, as if he was waiting for someone. The beggar walked over as if there was no one else around, sat in front of Li Yunxin casually, grabbed the food on the table and started eating. Seeing this, the waiter hurried over to chase him away, but Li Yunxin smiled and waved his hand. This is a friend. It's okay. The beggar glanced at him and continued to eat. When he was full, he burped and stared at Li Yunxin carefully. You're an interesting demon. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned and frowned. What? Seeing him like this, the beggar felt a bit proud and said, You knew that I was looking for you these days, so you deliberately exposed your whereabouts, so that I could find you. Now you're waiting for me here. I'm here, say what you want to say. Li Yunxin was stunned again, and slowly put down the wine cup. I don't know what you're talking about. See you later. After that, he stood up and was about to leave. The beggar didn't stop him and sneered. If you leave like this, how will you explain to your Miss Bai when you get back? Li Yunxin's body froze. The beggar laughed again. You put on a show for us on the street. Did you think we couldn't see through you? You said you're a disciple of the dragon cult. But in my opinion, you're the enemy of the dragon cult, right? At this moment, Li Yunxin didn't seem to be afraid of the boiling water anymore. He turned around and looked at the beggar, then sat back at the table and curled his lips. Oh, what do you mean? The beggar proudly told him about the second level that Yunzi had told him about. After he said it, Li Yunxin raised her eyebrows as expected. Oh, you actually saw through me. Everything was as Yunzi expected. Even the words he said were shockingly similar. The beggar smiled faintly and did not reply. Li Yunxin smiled as well. If that's the case, I won't hide it anymore. I'm sure you've already guessed my identity. The reason why I put on such a show to test you is to see if you are a smart person worth befriending. My master has a treasure in that person's hands that he must have. And this treasure is inextricably linked to you. However, my master doesn't want to cause any more trouble. He just wants to take that treasure and return as soon as possible. Oh, you should be clear about this. So in this matter, we can be friends. The beggar smiled when he heard that. Be friends. Your master killed Fairy Ling Kong of Daotong. How can we be friends? Li Yunxin was silent for a while. He poured himself a cup of wine and drank it all. He squinted at the beggar and smiled. Why play dumb? You and I both know that Fairy Ling Kong is not dead. As for why she is not dead and where she is now, I don't think I need to tell you, right? Right now my master wants that item. You want Fairy Ling Kong. Oh, you also want the jade slip of enlightenment that was originally in Dragon Sun's hands. So we each take what we need and kill that Lord Dongting. Isn't that perfect? The beggar squinted his eyes. Oh, you actually know about the jade slip of enlightenment. Li Yunxin just tilted his head and did not speak. The beggars were already 80 to 90% convinced by his actions. Because no one else could know so many secrets, the feather robe, the jade slip of enlightenment, and the not dead Lu Ling. So on such a night the two people, each with their own ulterior motives, reached a seemingly unbreakable relationship of trust. The beggar answered the words of the jade slip of enlightenment. Li Yunxin smiled. I don't just know. I also know that in order to find the jade slip, you have killed some people. But, he pointed at himself. I escaped. Although the beggar was surly, he was not stupid. After a moment of surprise, he looked at Li Yunxin and smiled evilly. Tell me, why did you disguise yourself like this? Oh, that Li Yunxin is actually so beautiful. It's a pity that I didn't see him at that time. Li Yunxin was stunned for a while. But this time, it was the genuine stupidity. His mind was filled with alarm. It was this person. On the night of the thunderstorm, the person who made his parents suddenly disappear. Ah, he let out a long and light sigh in his heart. I finally found you, my friend. The mysterious person who killed his parents did not show up, and he felt that the person was always hiding in the shadows. But now, he actually presented himself in front of him. After being stunned for a while, Li Yunxin put down the wine cup on his lips. My master likes Li Yunxin. Oh, he likes his taste. Li Yunxin smiled warmly. His arms were close to his ribs, and his hands were crossed. He sat obediently. He is also very pitiful. It is said that his parents, well, he said that they were plotted against. He said that his parents were very powerful, but they were killed by a sneak attack from a villain. When he heard this, he felt that he was even more interesting. It's a pity that he died later, so he asked me to transform into his appearance. When he said this, he was looking at the beggar's reaction. He saw that he was proud at first, but when he heard sneak attack from a villain, he frowned and wanted to say something but stopped. When he found out that Li Yunxin only said this, and then changed the topic to talk about his master, he was even more unhappy. Li Yunxin knew that this guy was very eager for him to mention what happened that night, or at least to say a few more words, so that he could defend himself. To immediately defend himself because of the words sneak attack from a villain would make him seem impatient, which was not the behavior of a master. But he didn't say it. Instead, he rambled on about some meaningless things, which only made the beggar more unhappy. For example, he praised Li Yunxin for being loyal, honest, handsome, smart, elegant, and elegant. Then he persuaded the beggar to drink a few cups of wine. It was night time, and there was an oil lamp on the table. As Li Yunxin spoke, he held his chin with his left hand, and moved the oil lamp with his right hand, making the flame flicker, as if it was following a certain pattern. The light, the brightness, the sound of the oil lamp sliding on the table, the rhythm of his words, his eyes and his movements. In the end it made the beggar, who was already annoyed and unwilling, even more annoyed. Then, Li Yunxin smiled and shook his head slightly. My mistress said that the person who killed his parents that night should also have great abilities. When such words fell into the beggar's ears, the annoyance in his heart seemed to be suppressed in an instant. What does this little maid know? Big Monster by Yunxin is really knowledgeable. Such a short period of happiness suddenly appeared in his heart, and his mood also became exceptionally good because of this sudden temporary relief. The words great abilities finally drew out all the words that were hidden in his heart, that he didn't know whether he should say or not. Thus he laughed. Bullsh *T. Let me tell you, I was the one who killed Li Yunxin's parents. I won the battle openly from 1,000 miles away. Chapter 143. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. This is the first time I've heard of this. We've talked for so long, but I don't know how to address you. The beggar smiled arrogantly and stood up from the table. He was originally a teenager of 12 or 13 years old, but after drinking a few glasses of wine, the prodigal son had become a hero. He now looked a bit heroic. Call me Qing Liangzi, the beggar said. Remember, my Taoist name is Qing Liangzi. Even though I change my appearance often, my name will never change. Li Yunxin smiled demurely. Qing Liangzi. Which grotto heaven's name is that? Qing Liangzi coughed. I'm not from the grotto heaven. Then you must be an expert from a sect, also a deity. Qing Liangzi frowned slightly. Not a sect either. Although the candlelight was dim, Li Yunxin had keenly captured the change of expression on this mysterious Qing Liangzi's face. especially when he drank and his control over his facial muscles became weaker. It was a very familiar expression, and he had seen it more than once in his previous life. For example, during a blind date, a girl from a small town kept bragging to a man who returned from the capital and had an annual salary of 500,000 yuan that she earned 3,000 yuan a month. She was considered an elite in the local society and looked at the silent man with a contemptuous and arrogant expression. Li Yunxin saw the expression on Qing Liangzi's face that a man should have. This made him feel astonished. In his opinion, even though Qing Liangzi wasn't a very normal person, he was more normal than all the cultivators he had met. Perhaps because they needed to go through the heavenly tribulation, almost all the cultivators in Daotong and Kenzo had very serious psychological problems. And this psychological problem was caused by their abandonment of lust, which was a high-end and grand method. A normal person must have emotions and desires. If one day, a person suddenly lost interest in everything and felt bored, then Li Yunxin would say that this person might have depression. However, for many cultivators, this was just a heavenly tribulation and a kind of emotion. He was a normal person to begin with. Even if he cultivated, he would still be a normal person with magical powers. It would be strange if he didn't have a psychological problem. But this was the tradition of cultivators. Daotong and Kenzo had their own set of methods that allowed cultivators with serious psychological problems to survive for thousands of years. Moreover, their lives were much better than those of ordinary people. After all, the cultivators had their own little society. Under specific rules and order, they could form a small world that was different from a normal person's. However, this quantum master Qing, so far, he had been acting too much like a normal person. There was indeed something wrong with him. He had a slight tendency to act out his personality. Li Yunxin was more familiar with this kind of personality. He liked to use exaggerated words and deeds to attract others' attention, and at the same time, he would use his emotions too much. In fact, it could be inaccurately and crudely described as severe chinibu. Li Yunxin, who had self-diagnosed himself as a high-energy antisocial and a performative personality, knew very well that the expression on Qing Liangzi's face meant that he believed in the depths of his heart that his background was higher than that of a sect, even higher than that of a grotto heaven. But this Qing Liangzi wasn't a fool who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He came together with a high-level grotto heaven cultivator. So, what was his background? So, Li Yunxin's face revealed a vivid look of sympathy and contempt, as if he was trying hard to suppress it. Ah, it's nothing. Heroes don't ask about their background. Although you're not from a grotto heaven sect, but you, Qing Liangzi snorted coldly and interrupted him. What's the big deal about Daotong and Kenzo? I know all the cultivation methods of those trash. Let's dual cultivate. Those people think that they have the most orthodox cultivation methods in the world. They think that every secret technique of the grotto heaven and the sect is a secret that can't be passed on, and they're afraid that others will learn it. He curled his lips and looked at Li Yunxin. We have all of them. Li Yunxin's face showed just the right amount of dullness, and then it quickly turned into a look of deep doubt. It was the kind of disappointed look that said, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Well, about this, Then which grotto heaven's elder is in the base? Qing Liangzi frowned angrily, and didn't let him change the topic. You don't believe me? Oomph. What kind of knowledge do you have, little demon? Let me ask you, do you know the phrase in the same boat? Have you ever heard of the Freemasonry? This was the third time tonight that he made Li Yunxin really stunned. His heart was in turmoil, and there was also a big drum beating in his heart. The ferocious waves slammed into the drum, causing his expression to change. Of course he had heard of the Freemasonry. That was in another world. It was an organization that seemed to be overly interpreted and mysterious. Of course, it seemed. According to his limited knowledge, it was a huge and mysterious religious organization that was said to have a history of thousands of years. It appeared in England in the 18th century, and its literal name was Freemasonry. It claimed to pursue the will of human survival and understand the mysteries of heaven and earth and the universe. There were many rumors about this organization that sounded ridiculous, but Li Yunqi knew that a lot of things that sounded ridiculous were actually very ridiculous and couldn't be true. But he quickly suppressed the fluctuations in his heart and just calmly shook his head slightly. Never heard of it, Freemasonry. Interesting name. Is it from the meaning of in the same boat? Is it a carpenter society that builds ships? He shouldn't have talked about carpenter. It would be too abrupt. But he had to take the risk. Qing Liangzi's origin was mysterious, and he indeed mastered the methods of Daotong and Kinzo at the same time. The reason why cultivators didn't practice both was because it was said that it would cause people to be possessed by the devil and eventually die. It was common knowledge that people couldn't practice incense and power of will. But this guy subverted it. And he mentioned a name that he was very familiar with. Li Yunqi knew that he wasn't the only one with a similar special identity in this world. Therefore, even if there was the phrase in the same boat, the name of the Freemasonry was strange. He didn't believe in coincidences. The Freemasonry was Freemasonry, so he said they were in the same boat because of the two words in the same boat. Observe Qing Liangzi's reaction. Seeing Qing Liangzi, he was stunned at first, and then frowned. What carpenter? Don't be disrespectful. What do you know, you demon? Our Freemasonry was established by hundreds of saints who reincarnated from ancient times. Saints live as long as heaven and earth, and are born to understand the mysteries of this primitive universe. The reincarnation of saints is to save the world from a great calamity that is about to come. In the same boat. Qing Liangzi talked for a quarter of an hour without stopping. Li Yunqi realized that this guy had been brainwashed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.